Chapter 360. Pale light scattered from the ceiling, illuminating this small room that had nothing but the necessary bed, stools, and tables. In this rather simple room, except for the woman sitting silently at the table, there was only the one-way glass on the west wall of the room and the person standing behind the one-way glass, observing this simple room and the woman. 3 days and 3 nights without eating or drinking. She's more tenacious than I expected. Standing behind the one-way glass, Ray Minkai shook his head slightly. She's very tricky. It's embarrassing to say that we used all kinds of torture methods, but still couldn't get her to talk. Kalinin, who was next to Ray Minkai, sighed and said helplessly. As a member of the mercenary group, Kalinin naturally knew that there was no shortage of tough bones among the mercenaries. It's just that he never thought that the seemingly weak woman sitting in the room would be the ugliest among the tough bones. All kinds of torture methods? Ray Minkai frowned and looked at Kalinin with some doubts. His eyes seemed to be questioning Kalinin's statement. The woman's state didn't seem to be treated unfairly. Therefore, Ray Minkai doubted Kalinin's statement. Feeling Ray Minkai's doubtful gaze, Kalinin coughed a few times and explained his statement. Cough. Cough, cough. Knight, you're thinking the wrong way. We, Mithril Mercenary Group, are not those vicious organizations. Although it's said to be torture methods, the methods we use are relatively gentle. Is that so? It seems that everyone is working hard. Ray Minkai smiled and suddenly changed the topic. However, even if we use those cruel methods, the other party might not talk. After all, she probably spent her teenage years in that kind of environment. Ray Minkai's mind suddenly flashed, and then he looked at Kalinin. His eyes were full of playful light. Major Kalinin, I have a proposal. Oh, Knight, please say it. Although Kalinin was a little surprised by Ray Minkai's sudden change of attitude, he still nodded and motioned for Ray Minkai to speak his mind. I think Major Kalinin can have a heart-to-heart talk with her. A heart-to-heart talk. Ray Minkai's proposal made Kalinin stunned. Then he shook his head as if to deny Ray Minkai's proposal. Knight, you're joking. Although I'm not qualified to say these words, as a former mercenary, I know that these people can't be solved by ordinary means like a heart-to-heart. More often than not, they can only be solved with a bullet. How do you know? Anyway, isn't the situation in a stalemate right now? Ray Minkai raised his hand and pointed at the woman sitting by the window. She was Xingnai, who should have died in the attack on the harbor, but became a prisoner of Mithril after Ray Minkai intervened. Ray Minkai's explanation left Kalinin speechless. Yes, Xingnai's stubborn resistance gave Kalinin a headache. If it weren't for Mithril's rules on prisoners, Kalinin might have used some inhumane methods. But, as Ray Minkai said, even if he could use those inhumane methods, it wouldn't be of much use. Ever since he got the name Wu Zhizheng Heir from Ray Minkai, Kalinin had used Mithril's intelligence network to gather information on this name. The result gave Kalinin a huge shock. Other than the information Ray Minkai said, Wu Zhizheng Heir's treatment of the children and youth was even worse than what Ray Minkai said. Among them, there were some heinous methods. But these might not be important anymore. Following Wu Zhizheng Heir's suicide, these children who were treated cruelly were either swept into the chaos of war and disappeared, or like Xingnai sitting at the table, they became prisoners. Knight, do you really think an ordinary method like a heart-to-heart talk can succeed? With these words, Ray Minkai knew that Kalinin was moved. How do you know if you don't try? Major Kalinin, at the end of the day, even if she was a cold mercenary on the outside, her heart might be yearning for someone to appear, even if it's someone similar. Ray Minkai's words had a hidden meaning, but Kalinin could understand it. After a moment of silence, Kalinin sighed secretly. If that's the case, I'll give it a try. Knight, I hope your suggestion will work. Ray Minkai smiled. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Everything depends on your charm, Major Kalinin. Kalinin snorted and left a sentence as he turned and walked into Xingnai's room. Thank you for your kind words. Knight. Under Ray Minkai's guidance and some kind of coincidence of fate, Kalinin and Xingnai finally met. Half an hour later, Teresa received a report that Kalinin personally met with Xingnai. The Major actually went personally? Does the captive have important information? Teresa put down the report and looked at Richard, who was standing beside her. Yes. It is said that Major Kalinin made the decision to personally interrogate the captive under Knight's suggestion. Richard responded and told her the information he learned. Knight? It's another Knight. Teresa was slightly taken aback, but she remained silent. Captain, do you have any questions? Richard noticed Teresa's strange behavior. No, Richard, I'm fine. Teresa first shook her head, then subconsciously pinched her small braid. This was Teresa's subconscious action when she was deep in thought. Every time it appeared, it meant that Teresa was thinking about something. Richard glanced at it and didn't say anything. He quietly waited for Teresa to speak the question herself. After a long time, Teresa faintly spoke. Richard, what do you think of Knight? He seems to have an extraordinary understanding of certain things. Even before we could determine whether the target was an enemy, Knight had already told us the target's information, actions, and goals. Now that I think about it, Knight seems to be a prophet. Richard pondered for a moment and slowly spoke. Knight, as the captain saw, he is a soldier with strict training. In addition, I can feel a rare etiquette from him. No, it should be said that the son of the Dan slave, or even the entire mithril frontline soldiers, can't feel from him. If I met Knight on the street, I'm afraid I would think that Knight is a young man with an excellent family education and knows etiquette. Although Richard's evaluation of Ray Minkai wasn't much, it was already beyond Teresa's expectations. Richard had always been a strict person, not to mention others. Even Teresa herself suffered from Richard's criticism when she was partnering with him to command the son of the Dan slave. Therefore, in the years she was partnering with Richard, Teresa had never heard of anyone who could get such a high evaluation from Richard. Richard, I didn't expect Knight to get such a high evaluation from you. Teresa smiled and looked back at Richard. Richard's expression didn't change much. On the contrary, he felt that his evaluation wasn't wrong. No, Captain, this is my evaluation after weighing the pros and cons. Perhaps, to some extent, my evaluation may have been too low. Oh, Teresa was a little surprised by Richard's confession. Richard, what do you mean? Captain, although the battle headquarters issued an order for Knight to join the son of the Dan slave, I feel that the person, organization, or power behind Knight doesn't come from within Mithril, but from somewhere we can't see. Why do you say that? Richard's eyes flashed in response to Teresa's question. Upbringing. Knight's behavior is no different from ordinary people, but there's a trace of difference in the subtle aspects. Difference? Teresa blinked. Her curiosity was piqued by Richard's words. Yes, it's not the smell of someone born in a reckless and violent military camp, but the smell of a student who graduated from a noble military academy filled with tedious etiquette courses. Noble military officer. Suddenly, Teresa remembered that night when Ray Minkai confessed his identity, which Teresa thought was a performance. At that time, Ray Minkai confessed that he was the Knight Captain of the Imperial Queen's personal guard. How is that possible? Teresa shook her head and denied it again. Then, Teresa continued to ask, based on what you've said, Richard, I'm afraid that there aren't many military academies that fit this criteria. This time, Richard did not answer. Instead, he fell into silence. Finally, Richard shook his head slightly. I don't know, Captain. Although I'm speculating where Knight came from, I lack substantial evidence. All the above speculations are based on my recent observations of Knight. Is that so? In other words, these are just baseless speculations. Yes. Also, Captain, I suggest that you keep the above conversation to yourself and keep it between the two of us. Although Knight's identity is very mysterious, but for now, Knight's existence is necessary for the son of the Dan slave. Moreover, he has no ill intentions towards us. On the contrary, with the help of the report, we have already received confirmation. With that said, Richard handed the document he had been holding in his hand to Teresa. Captain, look, this is the investigation based on the information provided by Knight. The results show that the information provided by Knight is indeed true. Teresa took the document and quickly glanced at it. The light in her eyes gradually became firm. She said in a clear voice, "This proves that the mastermind behind the chaos in the world and igniting wars everywhere, the organization called Amalgam, does exist. Yes, Captain. This way, our goal is already very clear." Yes. Combining the information provided by Ray Mingkai, Teresa's outline of the Amalgam's existence gradually became clearer. Moreover, Teresa also confirmed that standing at the top of the Amalgam organization was a person she was very familiar with. Her brother, Renard Testarossa. Does the battle headquarters already know about this information? I'm afraid they already know. That's good. Richard, after organizing the information again, immediately call for a battle meeting. I believe that soon, the battle headquarters will issue the latest mission. Yes, Captain. The sea breeze from the warm Mediterranean was charming. Sitting on the sunny beach made people want to have a good sleep. What a good mood. Your Excellency, Mr. A.G. Following the slight sound of footsteps on the fine sand, a man came to the table covered by the beach umbrella and said to the silver-haired man who was sitting at the table and enjoying the leisurely time. The silver-haired man turned around and looked at the person who had come. He saw a face covered in white foundation, with a big smile drawn on the corner of her mouth and a tear stain that almost fell to the corner of her mouth from the corner of her left eye. If he walked on the street with this face, he would probably scare children, but the silver-haired man did not care. Good afternoon, Mr. Clown. What brings you here today? Good afternoon. Your Excellency, Mr. A.G. I'm here today to ask you to lend me a person. I'm sure you'll gladly agree to my request. Clown respectfully bowed to the silver-haired man. Oh, who among the people here can catch your eye, Mr. Clown? The silver-haired man's eyes flashed with an inquisitive light as he asked curiously. Xia Yulan, the weapon that was raised by your Excellency Nine Dragons. Clown straightforwardly stated his request. Xia Yulan? Hee. Since you like her, Mr. Clown, feel free to take her. After all, after the mission failed, they're no longer of much value to the Amalgam. Moreover, to a certain extent, their existence is a hidden danger. The silver-haired man agreed to Clown's request without hesitation. Thank you for your generosity, Your Excellency Mr. A.G. Then, as a return gift, I'll give you the latest information. Information? Clown's return surprised the silver-haired man. Yes, that is, a knight has appeared beside Your Excellency's sister. Please pay attention to his presence. A knight. The silver-haired man raised his eyebrows and smiled. What an interesting nickname. Then, the silver-haired man nodded at Clown and thanked him. Thank you very much for your information, Mr. Clown. Also, may I know Miss Q's current situation? Miss Q. She's currently negotiating with Your Excellency Mr. A.U. and seems to be carrying out some kind of operation. If Your Excellency Mr. A.G. is interested, I can send you the contents of the negotiation. The clown smiled and made a very attractive suggestion. However, the silver-haired man was unmoved. But you have to pay the same price, don't you think? Your Excellency Mr. J, I understand your behavior. But now, I just want to stay here and enjoy this rare leisure time. Seeing that his self-promotion method had failed, the clown did not get angry. Instead, he bowed to the silver-haired man again, then turned around and left without hesitation. Goodbye, Your Excellency, Mr. A.G. I wish you a wonderful vacation. Chapter 361. Good morning, everyone. Today's weather is very good. It seems that today may be a very good day. Next, we will first play a message jointly released by various astronomical institutions and the International Astronomical Union. Recently, various astronomical institutions have coincidentally detected that an asteroid tentatively named Z0006 has suddenly crossed the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars and is approaching Earth at a very fast speed. According to the calculations of relevant experts, this asteroid seems to have a close contact with Earth. According to the tracking and observation of this asteroid that suddenly crossed the asteroid belt, this asteroid has a length of between 1,000 and 2,000 meters and a maximum diameter of 100 meters. According to the observed data, The composition and structure of this asteroid are mostly composed of iron, chromium, and other heavy metals. It cannot be ruled out that when it comes into contact with Earth, it will have an impact on the surface. For this upcoming event of the century, we invited famous astronomers to the scene to further understand it for us. Next, let's welcome, in a daze, Mira, who was in a deep sleep, seemed to hear the news broadcast from the television that was rarely turned on. A familiar fragrance also faintly drifted to Myra's nose through the gap in the door. This is that indelible sense of familiarity instantly pulled Mira out of her sleep and made Mira subconsciously pick up a long coat from the bedside. While putting it on her shoulders, she fumbled for her slippers and tried to walk out of the room. As the door opened, Mira saw a familiar figure busying about in the half-open kitchen. And that was how the familiar fragrance wafted out. "Brother, you're back?" Mira was stunned, then quickly ran to the kitchen door and shouted at Ray Minkai, who was busy inside. "Yo, good morning. I don't have any missions recently, so I came back. Besides, my current identity is a foreign language teacher of Jindai High School. Mira, breakfast is almost ready. Go wash up first." Ray Minkai scooped up the fried egg from the pot and put on the plate. He looked back at Mira, smiled, and called Mira to wash up and eat breakfast. And, for some reason, when she saw Ray Minkai's busy figure, Myra's accumulated fatigue from designing the new body instantly disappeared without a trace. What a sinful person. Kai. White Cat State Zero, who was lying on the table, glanced at the girl who walked briskly into the bathroom to wash up, then turned to look at Ray Minkai, who put the breakfast on the table one by one. "If you talk more, I'll take back your steak." Ray Minkai ignored White Cat State Zero's teasing, but indifferently glanced at the steak on the side of White Cat State Zero and immediately hit the White Cat State Zero's weak spot. Kai, you bastard. You don't even want others to talk about the trouble you caused. Just you wait and see. When your little princess comes, you'll see how I'll complain." Afraid that Ray Minkai would really take back the steak, White Cat State Zero immediately stopped teasing Ray Minkai and mercilessly tore off a large piece of the steak that was bigger than a palm. "Just enjoy your steak. State Zero, why didn't I realize that you have the potential to become a gossip woman?" Ray Minkai realized that after he fought with the giant beast and the Gemini, State White Cat Zero actually became a bit like a gossipy old woman. "Oof. Don't put me together with those messy middle-aged women." White Cat State Zero, who was tearing the steak, hummed vaguely, and at the same time pointed at the tablet on the table with its small paw that was stained with meat juice. "Here, that's the result of Myra's tireless work during this period of time. TSK. I'm really touched. Just for a brother who is not related by blood, you actually went to this extent. Kai, you're really sinful. State Zero, are you tired of steak? Next time, I'll give you a can of herring to try." Ray Minkai naturally knew about the tablet on the table. When he returned from his Son of Dan Nu, the first thing he saw when he walked into the room was the tablet covered by a pile of messy drawings. Even if he did not open the tablet, Ray Minkai could guess the information on the tablet from the drawings that covered the table. These were the results of Myra's calculations with the help of the technical team during this period of time. Little by little, she came up with the results of the original blueprints of the brand new body she had designed for Ray Minkai. Brother, what are you looking at?" Just as Ray Minkai sat on the sofa and was about to pick up the tablet to check, Mira, who had just finished washing up, walked out. Moreover, when Mira saw that Ray Minkai was about to open the tablet to check, she naturally picked up the tablet first and took the initiative to show her design results during this period of time to Ray Minkai. "Brother, this is the original design data of the ARX-8. Can you take a look?" Myra's initiative made Ray Minkai suddenly feel as if he had been away from home for a very long time. It had been so long that he did not realize that Mira, who was originally afraid of interacting with people, had become so proactive. ARX-8, Ray Minkai, who reacted from Myra's initiative, suddenly realized that the serial number of the new body that Mira designed for him seemed to be a little subtle. "Yes, I remember that brother is now driving an ARX-7 crossbow, right? Then, for the next new body, I want to use the next serial number of the same series to name it. Mira nodded and said her idea. Ray Minkai did not care about this point. On second thought, since the crossbow was already his own vehicle, then the name ARX, 8 Fiery Demon Sword, should also be exclusive to him. After all, one of the designers of the Fiery Demon Sword, Mira, was right next to him, and they even called each other brother and sister. Is that so? Mira, it's fine as long as you like this. Well, how about this? Mira, you go eat breakfast first. I'll take a look at the design first, okay? Ray Minkai made a suggestion, and Mira gladly accepted it. Therefore, while Mira was eating breakfast, she secretly glanced at Lei Minkai. Lei Minkai also began to look at the original design drawings of the brand new body called the ARX 8. The first thing that caught his eye was the 3 major requirements that Mira put forward for the new body: high maneuverability and flight ability, strong fighting ability, and long-range weapons that could suppress the enemy to a certain extent. These 3 requirements were not unfamiliar to Ray Minkai. This was an idea that Ray Minkai had already put into practice when he participated in the Steel Polo World competition in the Jiaodao world. What Ray Minkai did not expect was that Mira had already put forward these 3 requirements without any guidance, especially the first requirement. Although the 3rd generation of humanoid AS had already appeared in this world, the only AS with the ability to fly was Leonard's fallen angel. Mira, why do you want to develop a body with the ability to fly? According to the current mainstream, even the Mithril M9 did not consider this, right? After thinking about it, Ray Minkai still asked this question. Doesn't Lancelot also know how to fly? So, brother's new body can't fall behind this. Okay, it turned out that the reason why Mira wanted to develop a body with the ability to fly was so simple. Raising his eyebrows, Ray Minkai was also entangled on this point. For the AS to have the ability to fly, it probably had to rely on a lambda drive system. However, if there were external forces involved, this point could be ignored. Moving his gaze, Ray Minkai looked at the many options listed in the next requirement. Ray Minkai was not unfamiliar with the melee weapons shown in these options. Instead, he felt that this was already a standard configuration. In particular, because of the body's power and the technology tree, most of the melee weapons of the AS were physical weapons. Therefore, Ray Minkai did not struggle too much in this regard. What was worth Ray Minkai's attention was probably the hook design that was transplanted from Lancelot. He did not expect Mira to also plan to transplant Lancelot's hook weapon to the new body. In this regard, Ray Minkai just smiled slightly and let it be. And the last requirement. Ray Minkai had some ideas. Mira, have you ever thought about using an auxiliary robotic arm? As soon as she heard Ray Minkai's voice, Mira suddenly stopped what she was doing. Auxiliary robotic arm? Is it used to attach more weapons? Yeah, but is more used to load larger and more powerful weapons. When I was driving the crossbow, I found that the power of the lambda drive system was not limited to this. Recalling the behemoth that could rely on the lambda drive system to operate and weighed more than 1,000 tons, Ray Minkai felt that the design of the long-range weapon in the original design seemed to be a bit too conservative. Lambda drive system? With Ray Minkai's hint, Mira suddenly fell in a deep thought. As one of the whisperers, Mira naturally knew what the lambda drive system represented. As long as the power contained in this system could be used 100%, perhaps the body that Mira wanted to design now could usher in a subversive change. Mira's contemplation lasted for a while. From the morning until late in the morning, Mira was still sitting at the table with her head lowered, thinking about the lambda drive system. The only difference was that the breakfast in front of Mira was only half eaten. Ray Minkai had already gently taken it away and replaced it with a cup of steaming milk. During this time, Jack, who already knew that Ray Minkai had returned, came to inquire about today's itinerary. Ray Minkai sat quietly in the living room and accompanied Mira. As the sun gradually set, Mira, who was in deep thought, suddenly stood up and said loudly, "I understand." Then, she rushed out of the house and ran quickly toward the design center on the next floor. Ms. Mira, who was fully immersed in the new body, didn't seem to notice Jack, who had just arrived at the door. She ran past Jack like a gust of wind. "Jack, let her go. Looks like I need Jack to send you dinner tonight." After watching the white cat Zero follow Mira out, Ray Minkai also came to the door and nodded to Jack. Jack retracted his gaze from the stairs and respectfully bowed to Ray Minkai. "Yes, Your Excellency. I'll go prepare dinner now. Also, maybe I should prepare a cup of hot black tea." Looking at Ms. Mira, "I'm afraid she'll have to stay up late again tonight." "Okay, go, Jack." "Yes." After Jack left to prepare Myra's dinner, Ray Minkai stood alone in the corridor, looking at the quiet neighborhood, and sighed with some emotion. "ARX 8, Flaming Demon Sword? I'm afraid it'll become unrecognizable." Sighing was one thing. Next, what Ray Minkai had to do was to make up for Myra's days of absence. Although Ray Minkai knew that Jack's backer, Mallory, would definitely arrange everything, he still had to personally show his face in Array Sendai High School. One must know that Ray Minkai's social status here was Array Sendai High School's foreign language teacher. As expected, when Ray Minkai drove to Array Sendai High School, he was immediately discovered by Kagurazuka, who was standing at the door and checking the students' bags. Lei-sensei, where have you been all this time? I haven't seen you for a long time." The surprise on Kagurazuka's face was undisguised. That also attracted the attention of the other students. "Just something at home. I need to go back. I've troubled Kagurazuka-sensei." "Oh, right. Is the principal in the office now? I have something to ask the principal." After locking the car door, Ray Minkai nodded and asked Kagurazuka with a smile. "Oh, the principal is in the office now. If he knows you're back, he'll probably be very happy. Come to think of it, not only Lei-sensei, even Mira classmate often asks for leave." "Lei-sensei, is your family situation very troublesome?" It seemed that Kagurazuka was very concerned about Ray Minkai's disappearance during this time and constantly tried to find other excuses to make Ray Minkai stay. "Perhaps. Thank you for your reminder. But I have to go find the principal now. We'll see you later, Kagurazuka-sensei." The scene of Ray Minkai leaving in a hurry and Kagurazuka hesitating to speak was seen by the three people standing at the side. This is really big news. I didn't expect our Kagurazuka-sensei to start thinking about love," Tokapan Kyoko said in surprise, while holding her beloved camera and taking pictures of Kagurazuka. It's useless. The new Lei-sensei didn't pay attention to Kagurazuka-sensei. That's simply a waste of time. It had to be said that Chidori's eyes were very sharp, and she immediately saw that Ray Minkai's attitude towards Kagurazuka was only at the boundary of a familiar stranger. It can't be, but Kagurazuka-sensei's conditions are also good. If it were me, I'm afraid I would be tempted. Tokapan Kyoko still didn't believe that Ray Minkai would take such an attitude. However, Chidori showed a look of disdain, and after waving at Tokapan Kyoko, she grabbed Sagara Sosuke, who also just came back with Ray Minkai from the Son of Dan Slave. "Sagara Sosuke, what do you think? Perhaps, in the entire Shinsei High School, only Sagara Sosuke and Chidori knew Ray Minkai's true identity." Yes." Under Chidori's questioning, Sagara Sosuke was stunned for a moment, and then after thinking very seriously, he gave a plausible answer. "I don't know if Lei-sensei will have an intimate relationship with Kagurazuka-sensei, but I know that Lei-sensei's code name is Night." "Night?" Tokapan Kyoko was slightly surprised, and then she showed a very interested smile. "In other words, there's a princess beside Lei-sensei? Probably? I don't know either. Perhaps the codename is just a codename." This time, Sagara Sosuke was stumped. After all, for him, he didn't know why Ray Minkai used Night as a codename. Okay, it's just a codename. There's no need to continue investigating. It's time for class. Let's go." For some reason, Chidori became a little impatient and pushed Tokapan Kyoko into the school. Chapter 362. The warm sunlight scattered through the window, making the entire large office seem particularly peaceful. On the tea table on the side of the office, there were two old men sitting opposite each other. Seeing them talking and laughing, it was obvious that they were old friends who had known each other for a long time. "Teacher Lei, you're back. It just so happens that I have some information to give you. Wait for me here. I'll be back soon." When the old principal of Array Generation High School saw Ray Minkai knock on the door and walk into the office, he casually said something and took the initiative to get up and leave the office. There was no doubt that he was casually finding a reason to give this office to Ray Minkai and the other old man who was talking and laughing with him. Ray Minkai had seen the old man who was related to Ray Minkai joining the Sons of Dan's slave as a knight, Mallory. "Knight, long time no see. I heard that you've been very active recently. Do you mind telling me about your exciting experiences during this period of time? Just treat it as some free time before the principal comes back." Mallory picked up the cane next to him, and as he stood up, he invited Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai naturally wouldn't refuse this invitation. However, when he saw that Mallory actually appeared here, Ray Minkai was indeed surprised. Ray Minkai didn't expect that this man, who had dual identities and could influence the international trend, would appear in front of Ray Minkai in this seemingly inconspicuous academy. "It seems that Knight is surprised that I'm here." Mallory seemed to prefer to call Ray Minkai Knight. "Yes. Could it be that this Array Generation High School was also built by you?" Ray Minkai, who gladly accepted the invitation and sat down, voiced out the doubts in his heart. "No. The history of this Array Generation High School might be similar to my age. Therefore, I didn't build it. It's just that in my early years, when I was still considered young, I once lent a hand to this academy, and because of this, I formed a friendship with the principal's family." Mallory, who also sat down, placed his cane beside him and chuckled. "I came here today just to catch up with an old friend. I didn't expect you to report back to the academy today, Knight." Although Mallory spoke calmly, Ray Minkai knew that this old fox had been targeting him from the start. Otherwise, even if he was looking for an old friend, he wouldn't have appeared in front of Ray Minkai so coincidentally. When Ray Minkai left the Son of Dan's slave and returned to his residence, Mallory had probably already received the news from the old butler Jack. Therefore, Ray Minkai didn't expose Mallory's trick. Instead, he sat on the sofa and waited for Mallory's next sentence. Obviously, Ray Minkai's attentive look made Mallory stunned. It seemed that he wasn't used to Ray Minkai's reaction at this time. But after all, he was an old fox. Soon, Mallory found the next topic. "Knight, the video of you driving the crossbow has already set off a storm in Mithril. Especially in Mithril's research and development department, it's especially intense." "Are you going to transfer me to the research and development department?" Ray Minkai frowned and began to guess what Mallory was going to say next. The most likely guess was probably the decision to transfer Ray Minkai away from the front line and to the research and development department. However, there were no absolutes in the world. Moreover, Mallory never had this intention. Ever since Ray Minkai swaggered into Oceania, he had already guessed that Ray Minkai's thoughts would not stop at the research and development department. "I'm afraid that Ray Minkai's thoughts would overlap with my original intention of establishing Mithril to a certain extent. No, Knight, I and Mithril will not transfer you, an ACE, away from the front line. After all, the pressure we will face in our next actions will be increasing. To be able to support the front line and have the combat power to open up the situation, I'm not willing to waste it on the research and development department." Mallory smiled slightly and admitted his thoughts without hiding anything. Although it was a straight shot, it was very much in line with Ray Minkai's thoughts. "So, Knight, what do you mean?" Ray Minkai looked at Mallory's old face. In the near future, the old man, who was also a senior executive of Amalgam and the founder of Mithril, will be shot by his son at some point in time under the witness of Kalinin. Mallory didn't say anything. He just pulled out a document from under the table between the sofa and handed it to Ray Minkai. "Knight, although you haven't been honest about some things, I believe you will be interested in the information recorded in this document." Ray Minkai lowered his gaze and watched as Mallory removed his hand from the document. He then raised his gaze to look at Mallory. "This is a gift in return." Mallory smiled gently. His smile was full of trust between friends. Knight, let me see the possibility of fulfilling my long-cherished wish in return. Lambda drive system. The only thing that could move Mallory was the recent battle between Ray Minkai and the Gemini King of Hell in the port area with the crossbow. Yes, Lambda drive system. Although I don't know the origin of this system, I saw the possibility from you, Knight, and the AES named crossbow. The possibility of defeating or even destroying the amalgam. Ray Minkai naturally knew Mallory's thoughts, but he still added a sentence. Knight, I understand your thoughts, but if you really go to the point of destroying the amalgam, then wouldn't your wish to purify the amalgam and pull back the path that your predecessors prayed for be in vain? Mallory shook his head slightly, then picked up his cane again and slowly stood up. He leaned on his cane while walking to the window behind the desk, looking down at the groups of students walking into the academy. Knight, if the abscess has reached the point of no cure, what will you do? At this moment, Mallory's back was facing Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai couldn't see his expression when he said this, but he could feel a sense of desolation, despair, and uncontrollable anger from Mallory's tone. Perhaps a long time ago, Mallory, who envisioned leading the world to the path of peace and unification and paid an unimaginable price for his predecessors, discovered that the amalgam had changed from the inside out, and this anger had already ignited. However, at that time, Mallory, who was starting to be marginalized, didn't have the power to turn the situation around other than his hereditary identity as an upper echelon of the amalgam. Facing Mallory's anger, Ray Minkai was silent for a moment, then slowly said, naturally, cut it off. Only by cutting off the majority of the abscesses and the abscesses can the amalgam welcome a new life. Exactly. The amalgam has already reached the point of no return. Especially, Mallory's right hand gripped the cane tightly, as if he wanted to crush the cane. However, his old body couldn't vent the anger in his heart. After the anger, there was only endless regret left in his frail old body. Knight, take a look at that report. In order to obtain this report, I didn't hesitate to destroy all the inheritance left behind by my father. Mallory's increasingly bleak back made Ray Minkai feel a bit of pity, but his curiosity for the report made Ray Minkai throw this aside. The sound of a document being flipped open was heard. The next moment, Ray Minkai frowned deeply, because he saw it. The moment the document was opened, what came into view was a photo of a man and a woman standing on an unknown cliff. Ray Minkai was unfamiliar with the man's appearance. However, Ray Minkai recognized the woman's appearance immediately. Miss Q. As expected, she had run into this world and hidden herself. Sir, when did this report come? When it came to Miss Q. Ray Minkai didn't beat around the bush and directly asked. Knight, it happened after the battle at the port. That man is Mr. AU, the man who controlled most of the amalgam's cadres through various means, and also the culprit who accelerated the amalgam's descent into the abyss. Ray Minkai agreed with the first half of Mallory's words, but in the second half, Ray Minkai had a different opinion. Mr. EU's existence undoubtedly accelerated the collapse of the amalgam, but the most fundamental reason was that in decades of changing generations, the pillar that could maintain the original ideals of the amalgam was lost. However, Ray Minkai didn't intend to say this out loud. After all, Mallory, who was old and experienced, should also understand this principle. It was just that he couldn't accept this fact and subconsciously attributed all the fault to the appearance of Mr. AU. Ray Minkai didn't continue the topic and still quietly waited for Mallory to continue. Mallory took a deep breath and continued. 48 hours ago, Mr. AU and this mysterious woman appeared in the Middle East and seemed to be planning a plan. According to the information from the people I sent, this plan is most likely related to some kind of extremely lethal weapon. Extremely lethal? A nuclear bomb? At the mention of the Middle East, Ray Minkai immediately recalled that a certain original plot in Full Metal Gear happened in the same region. Mallory was silent for a moment, then said in a deep voice, I'm afraid that's the case. After learning this information, I asked Mithril to urgently investigate the weapons reserves of various countries. The result was that there was an anomaly in the weapons reserve database of a certain large country. The result is that someone is secretly smuggling this extremely lethal weapon out of the country. Ray Minkai had already guessed this conclusion after Mallory mentioned this information. Unexpectedly, Nine Dragons, who was supposed to carry out the plan, was replaced by someone else who continued to carry out the plan after he had received his benevolence. Yes, Knight, go and destroy this plan. If necessary, the command of the Sons of Danslave will be handed over to you. Suddenly, Mallory made a promise that Ray Minkai couldn't refuse. Wait, I can understand that you want to stop the Amalgam's plan. But why do you want to hand over the command of the Sons of Danslave to me? Captain Teresa's commanding ability is far above mine. Ray Minkai directly rejected Mallory's promise without thinking. No, this isn't a complete transfer of command. Knight, what I'm saying is that if necessary, the command of the Sons of Danslave will be temporarily handed over to you. Because today, as more and more airframes equipped with Lambda drive systems participate in the battle, a frontline commander who can skillfully use the Lambda drive system and understand the differences in its performance is necessary. Mallory turned around with his back to the window and looked at Ray Minkai calmly. I understand Teresa's ability very well, and I agree very much. However, Teresa, who has always been on the Sons of Danslave, doesn't know that the intensity of the battle between airframes equipped with Lambda drive systems on the frontline battlefield has far exceeded any battle in the known history of mankind. The slightest carelessness will cause Mithril, which has already fallen behind Amalgam in the use of Lambda drive systems, to lose its only Lambda drive system airframe, a strong crossbow. At that time, Mithril's situation will inevitably become extremely passive. In order to prevent Mithril from falling into such a situation and passively accepting everything, we must be one step ahead and eliminate the unstable factors that may cause such a future. Mallory's voice was unusually determined, as if he had already seen a future that was about to happen. Indeed, after losing the crossbow, Mithril's situation became extremely passive, and it was even almost destroyed by Amalgam's all-out attack. Preemptive strike? Sir, yes. I don't know the identity of the mysterious woman. The intelligence personnel who have been sacrificed also didn't find out her identity, but I feel that the confidence of Mr. O to carry out the plan that we still can't see clearly should come from this mysterious woman. Mallory's analysis was very reasonable, and it was even close to the truth. Ray Minkai closed his eyes, and after a moment of silence, he said slowly and forcefully, Yes, sir. I know a little about the identity of this mysterious woman. She doesn't have a name, only a name that is very similar to a code name. That is Miss Q. According to my several contacts with her, this woman seems to have technology in her hands that we can't find out, as well as means that can cause unimaginable disasters around the world. Having said that, Ray Minkai stood up from the sofa, shook the document in his hand, and said word by word with a playful light in his eyes. In fact, even if you didn't promise to transfer the command of the Sons of Danslave to me when necessary, I would still carry out this mission, because I still have some things to settle with this woman. Chapter 363. Time waits for no one. After discovering Miss Q's whereabouts, Lei Minkai couldn't sit still any longer, even though he had just returned to this peaceful world from the Son of Danslave. Therefore, under the principal's attitude of not exposing him, Ray Minkai only walked around Array Generation High School once before leaving the school again. As if, no, it should be said that from the beginning, he was just a passerby to this school. Sir, is this enough? Standing in the office and watching Ray Minkai drive out of the school, the principal respectfully asked Mallory, who was still sitting on the sofa. This is enough. Array Generation High School is still Array Generation High School. Principal, you are still the principal. Everything is as usual. Mallory let out a long sigh of relief, got up with his cane, and left the office step by step under the principal's respectful gaze. The The matter here was done. The following matters were handed over to Ray Minkai and Teresa. With the amalgam's wealth and influence exhausted, Mallory didn't have much power to redeem the amalgam's path. Therefore, he simply made the decision to let Ray Minkai destroy the amalgam. What he couldn't do, what he couldn't get, it was better to let an outsider destroy it. At least, this outsider seemed to have a similar philosophy as him. All of this was just a gamble. For Mallory, an old man who wanted to fulfill his father's dream, but was getting weaker and weaker, the only thing he could do now was this gamble. If he lost the gamble, he would cross the border of death and be reduced to ashes. But for Mallory, this was just the result of fate. Half an hour later, Ray Minkai's car returned to the neighborhood. Before getting out of the car, Ray Minkai saw the old butler Jack guarding the entrance of the building. "Jack, do you already know?" Without saying much, Ray Minkai asked Jack as soon as he got off the car. "Yes, sir. I have already prepared your luggage. Please be at ease, sir." Old Jack's attitude was even more respectful than before. Ray Minkai was well aware of this, but he did not point it out. "Yes, I'm counting on you. I'll go say goodbye to Mila first." However, Ray Minkai did not successfully bid farewell to Mira. What awaited Ray Minkai was a note that asked him to come back early. "Kai, you are truly sinful." The white cat, State Zero, who was lying on top of the fridge, glanced at the note in Ray Minkai's hand and repeated what he had said before. "State Zero, do you have too much free time?" Ray Minkai put down the note and glanced at State Zero, the white cat. The white cat State Zero yawned and said lazily, "Of course I'm free." There were over 100 people guarding the place, both openly and covertly. Ordinary militants would not be able to raid this place. "Don't you think I'm too free?" "If you're free, you can come with me," Ray Minkai retorted. "Do you dare?" Although ordinary militants would not be able to attack this place, what if it was them? This time he came back and immediately attacked. "You must have found their tracks, right?" White Cat State Zero's eyes were very sharp. Ray Minkai did not take the initiative to say the information, but the White Cat State Zero had already guessed it. "Yes, miss. Q has appeared." As soon as Ray Minkai's voice fell, the fur on White Cat State Zero's body suddenly stood up, but in the next second, it gradually returned to its previous gentle appearance. "Go. Anyway, miss. Q will not be an easy target to catch. This time, take it as a greeting to her." As it spoke, White Cat State Zero suddenly jumped down from the refrigerator and jumped to the balcony. It looked up at the blue sky above and lay down on the balcony. At first glance, it was as if the sun was in a different place. The White Cat State Zero's actions made Ray Minkai somewhat puzzled, but in the end, he did not delve into it. Time moved forward again. As the helicopter slowly landed on the deck of Son of Dan Nu from the night sky, Ray Minkai, who had not left Son of Dan Nu for more than 24 hours, once again stepped on the deck of this assault submarine. "Welcome back, Knight." The one who welcomed Ray Minkai was Kalinin. "Major, I didn't expect you to come to pick me up. Time is tight. We can't waste any more time. Knight, follow me." Kalinin's expression did not seem to be relaxed, which made Ray Minkai feel a sense of urgency. Could it be that in less than 24 hours, Mr. O and Miss Q had come up with some kind of trick? Although he was puzzled, Ray Minkai still followed behind Kalinin and came to the war room. Here, Melissa, Cruz, and the others had been waiting for a long time. However, after Ray Minkai scanned the area, he didn't discover anyone's appearance. Sergeant Sagayoshi Sosuke is still staying at Areidai High School to perform protection duties. His position will be filled by night. As soon as the meeting started, Kalinin said this decision that surprised everyone. Cruz, in particular, whistled. He, Sagayoshi Sosuke, is really lucky. Now I'm a little envious of him." However, before he finished speaking, he was slapped back by Melissa sitting next to him. "Shut up, idiot." Kalinin glanced at Cruz, who was beaten up every day, and then looked at Ray Minkai. "Knight, do you have any questions?" "No, I have no questions." After receiving Ray Minkai's reply, Kalinin immediately began to arrange the battle. Recently, according to the intelligence and combat mission arrangements from the headquarters, We SRT need to send an elite team to assist the Indian Ocean team in attacking a nest hidden in a country in the Middle East. Kalinin took the remote control and pressed it, and a photo suddenly appeared on the projection screen behind him. This photo was the one Ray Minkai saw from Mallory before. It was the photo of Mr. AU and Miss Q standing together. When this photo appeared, Melissa could not help but raise her hand and ask a question. Major, is the target of this mission the man and woman in the photo? Who are they? Kalina nodded slightly and then calmed down. Now, we are announcing to everyone here a new piece of information that has just been confirmed. This is definitely an explosive piece of information, and the existence of this information reveals that the war has not yet subsided and the fundamental reason why Mithril was formed. At this moment, when Kalinin wanted to further disclose the information, Teresa suddenly walked into the combat conference room with Richard. Major, let me do the rest. I think this information should be announced by me personally. Teresa, who walked into the combat conference room, looked at Kalinin with a firm gaze. Hearing this, Kalinin nodded and stepped aside. He turned around and stood beside Richard, waiting for Teresa to speak. On the podium, Teresa, who replaced Kalinin's position, and Ray Minkai looked at each other, then slowly said the information that was absolutely explosive for everyone present. I believe everyone sitting here is an elite of Mithril. Ever since you joined Mithril, I believe that all of you have witnessed the purpose of our Mithril Guild's existence. But why would Mithril be formed and act for the sake of maintaining world peace, a concept that seems silly, foolish, and even incomprehensible to ordinary people? At this point, Teresa's words stopped, as if she wanted to see everyone's reaction. Unsurprisingly, everyone present instantly began to discuss this matter. Some were baffled by Teresa's words, and made it clear that they only joined Mithril for the money. Some shouted at Teresa. As long as Teresa was still in the Son of Dan's slave, they were willing to continue to work for Mithril. In the midst of these discussions, Melissa and Cruz seemed particularly dignified. After a moment of silence, Melissa looked at Ray Minkai, who was sitting not far away from her. Knight, do you know the truth behind this mission? Ray Minkai nodded slightly. I know a little. Perhaps the real enemy of Mithril has appeared. Ahem. Quiet. At this moment, Richard, who had been silent all this time, took a step forward and shouted to stop the commotion. This was also Richard's persona in this meeting. After everyone quieted down, Richard looked at Teresa. Captain, you can continue. Teresa smiled slightly. Thank you, Richard. Then, a rare trace of fierceness appeared on Teresa's small face. It seems that everyone here thinks that Mithril's actions so far have been foolish. But I don't know if you know that when Mithril made such foolish actions, there were already people in this world who were even more foolish than us. With the idea of unifying the world and ruling the world was in a mess, igniting the flames of war everywhere, causing countless people to be homeless and families to be destroyed. After taking a deep breath, Teresa looked at the man with a scar on his face sitting on the left side of the conference room. Ivanovich, haven't you always wanted to know who the culprit behind the war that destroyed your country and your home? Now, I can tell you. Although Teresa's voice was delicate and crisp, there was a strong and powerful penetrating force. With the efforts of Mithril's intelligence department, we finally found the culprit who started the war in all parts of the world with a more foolish idea than Mithril. Teresa raised her hand, pointed at the man and woman on the projection screen behind her, and said sonorously, "And the two people in the photo are one of the culprits. They exist in the form of an organization, and they secretly hide in the shadows of the world, influencing the international trend of the world as they wish, wantonly playing with the lives of civilians, trampling on precious peace, just to satisfy the ridiculous and foolish delusions in their hearts." A trace of anger gradually emerged in Teresa's words, but Teresa didn't show an angry look. Instead, she showed a smile that made everyone a little frightened. This organization that destroyed countless peace and broke many families is called Amalgam. In addition, here, I will announce a piece of news that may be very unfavorable for me." As soon as he heard Teresa's words, Ray Minkai's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of light. Teresa doesn't want to directly disclose Leonard's existence, right? Obviously, Ray Minkai's guess was correct. After Teresa took a few deep breaths, a resolute light burst out from her eyes. "Everyone, now our intelligence department has some information about the leader of Amalgam. In addition to the man and woman in the photo, we also have some information about another leader, and the name of this leader is Leonard Testarossa." As soon as these words came out, the room was silent. It wasn't until a few minutes later that everyone slowly recovered from the shocking fact brought by a certain surname. Tai Testarossa. The entire war room was in an uproar again. There was no doubt. Teresa's existence was undoubtedly equivalent to the existence of a goddess for the son of Dan's slave. As long as it involved Teresa, most of the members would show a completely different attitude from usual. And now, when they learned that the surname of the leader of Amalgam, who was likely to be the nemesis of Mithril, was the same as Teresa's surname, everyone was stunned. Teresa was not surprised by this, because when she decided to disclose the existence of Leonard, who had been confirmed to be the leader of Amalgam, Teresa was mentally prepared to be questioned by the crew. However, from the current situation, it seemed that there would be no questioning. "Quiet. The captain hasn't finished speaking yet." In order to maintain order in the conference room, Richard stood up again. In the war room that was quiet again, Teresa slowly took a breath and made a request from the bottom of her heart to everyone present. "As you might expect, Leonard Testarossa is the brother of Teresa Testarossa. I'm very sorry. This is an unfortunate scandal of our family. But I feel that because of this, I need to immediately disclose the existence of my brother, Leonard Testarossa. I want to stop this arrogant and stupid brother from continuing to mess up the world. However, I can't do it alone. So, can you help me?" The answer, it was obvious. Under the personal request of the goddess Teresa, who was the son of the Dan slave, everyone present expressed that this was a mission that had to be completed without hesitation. Sitting on the side of the war room, Ray Minkai couldn't help but give Teresa a thumbs up when he saw her secretly relieved and successfully disclose the existence of Amalgam. "Well done, Teresa." Chapter 364. A dry desert, a blazing sun, and a strong wind that stirred up sand and dust in an undulating land. At a glance, it was a withered, yellow, lifeless land. This was the area where Ray Minkai's mission target was located, a land ravaged by drought and the scorching sun. Yours too. Report the condition of the airframe. Half an hour had passed since they were airdropped by the transport aircraft to a ravine 50 kilometers east of the mission target. In addition, due to the wind, sand, temperature, and other complex environmental factors, the M9 and crossbow participating in this mission could not activate the ECS system to rapidly move. They could only secretly move according to the surrounding terrain and the route shown on the satellite map, gradually approaching the mission target area. Yours 2 has no problems. What about yours 6? Melissa glanced at the real-time monitoring parameters of the system and gave a brief response. Yours 6 has no problems. It's just that our partner team seems to have some opinions. Kurlutz, who was at the back of the formation, responded and reminded Ray Minkai and Melissa of the current situation. Ray Minkai looked down and already knew what Kurlutz was referring to. It turned out that before departure, the special team formed by Ray Minkai, Melissa, and Kurlutz had been targeted by the M9 team in the Indian Ocean. In the end, this was only because once the Mithril team changed their equipment, they would usually prioritize the Pacific team, where the son of Danslave was as the first target for equipment change. Over time, the other teams in the ocean would naturally be resentful. It was inevitable that there would be some friction when they met the people from the Pacific team. However, in general, even if there were conflicts, it was still better than when Xiangliang Sosuke had come here alone, where the M9 team from the Indian Ocean made things difficult for him. They even denied Xiangliang Sosuke's opinion in their tactical arrangements. But now, it was already past the fixed time for communication according to the regulations. According to the tactical arrangement before departure, after the airdrop, the two teams would split up and move toward the mission target area from the north and south respectively to form an encirclement around the mission target. At the same time, when moving secretly, the two teams had to report their positions to each other every 10 minutes. Night. It's been 15 minutes since the last announcement. Under Cruz's reminder, Melissa finally asked this question. As a veteran, he naturally knew what would happen after the two squads clashed. This was especially true for mercenary groups that lacked discipline and battle principles. This problem was even more common. After Ray Minkai pondered for a moment, he took the initiative to send out an inquiry signal in an attempt to contact the Indian Ocean team that was located a few kilometers away. However, Ray Minkai's signal did not receive a response immediately. It was only after the crossbow and the two M9s had advanced a full 6 kilometers from the canyon occupied by Gale that they received a reply. Malfunction? After performing emergency treatment on the spot, they had just restarted the mission? What the hell are they doing? When Melissa saw the contents of the letter, her eyes widened. It was as if he couldn't believe that his teammate would use such an absurd reason to brush off his impulsiveness. Don't worry about them. Ray Minkai, who had a clear memory of the Indian Ocean team, gently shook his head and signaled Melissa not to pursue this small issue. Night. This won't do. If we allow them to act on impulse, I'm afraid it will affect the completion of this mission. Melissa was a little angry. She never thought that something like this would happen to the Indian Ocean team. Okay, Sister Mal, this is just a small matter. As long as we can complete the mission in the end, it's fine. As soon as Cruz realized that Melissa was about to explode in anger, he immediately jumped out to smooth things over. Shut up. We're in combat mode. Don't call my name. Yours 6. However, after Cruz's interruption, Melissa's anger subsided. She also knew that not every mercenary hired by Mithril would be as good as the soldiers of the Pacific team. Yours 2, yours 6. Now, I hope you can listen to what I'm about to say. At this time, a map of the mission target appeared in front of Ray Minkai. This map would only be triggered by the system when the M9 team, led by Strongbow, was within 10 kilometers of the mission target and displayed in front of Ray Minkai. Melissa Cruz, what I'm about to say will be conveyed through our team's dedicated communication channel. After the next battle, you can share information with our teammates based on the situation at the scene. In the whistling wind, Strongbow stood at the exit of the canyon, raised his right hand, and signaled Melissa and Cruz's M9 to hide in the shadows of the canyon. Although Melissa and Cruz did not understand, they still did as they were told and waited for Ray Minkai's next words. Listen. After Strongbow's radar scanned the surroundings of the canyon exit, Ray Minkai slowly opened his mouth. I believe you still remember the information conveyed by Captain Teresa before we departed, right? Yes. Melissa and Cruz replied in unison. Then, did you notice anything unusual? Ray Minkai asked again. This time, Melissa and Cruz were puzzled. Fortunately, Ray Minkai did not intend to test them. Yours 2, yours 6. What I'm conveying now is the speculation we came up with after discussing with Colonel Teresa and Major Kalinin. Although our intelligence department paid a huge price to obtain important information related to the amalgam and speculated the current location of the leader. However, behind this intelligence, there's a faint trace of unusualness. After combining the information from many sources and discussing with Colonel Teresa and Major Kalinin, we finally concluded that this may be a bait thrown by the enemy. Bait? When this was said, Melissa and Cruz were stunned. If this was the case, why would they send their team here? Yes and no. According to Colonel Teresa's speculation, this may not be a bait thrown to us. Ray Minkai recalled that before the attack, he was suddenly called by Teresa and told of this speculation. At that time, Ray Minkai was also surprised by Teresa's speculation, because this Middle East mission should have been dispatched by Xiangliang Soji, and under the circumstances of paying a huge price, he was able to retreat unscathed after severely injuring 9 dragons and killing his former comrades. Now, 9 Dragons was killed by Ray Minkai. This trip to the Middle East was bound to have unexpected situations. However, if one were to say that the information this time was a bait released by the enemy knight, I know this may be an unacceptable speculation. After all, our Mithril Intelligence Department paid such a huge price to obtain such important information. Teresa had already expected Ray Minkai's doubts and began to explain why she made such a speculation. It is precisely because our intelligence department paid such a huge price that it aroused my suspicion. Assuming that the enemy had the powerful strength to directly destroy our intelligence personnel from the beginning, how did our intelligence personnel pass on this information in the desperate situation of destruction? Was a moment of luck, or was the intelligence personnel well trained? Teresa's eyes revealed a glimmer of wisdom. Whether it was luck or well trained, I believe it. However, there is another question in this. That is, from the intelligence personnel's report, I mentioned that there were many suspected to be poisonous organisms, and they participated in the search for our intelligence personnel. Did the enemy deliberately let our intelligence personnel go? With Teresa's reminder, a memory suddenly flashed in Ray Minkai's mind. In this memory, there was information that Teresa did not know. Mr. O, this amalgam leader from an island country, did not seem to be as simple as coveting Reynolds' property. He probably also wanted to kill Mallory, who had lost control of the amalgam. Otherwise, he would not have intentionally or unintentionally let go of Mithril. No, it should be said that on the surface, he was a member of Mithril, but in fact he was Mallory's private intelligence personnel. The bait for this piece of information was most likely meant for Mallory. As for the existence of Mithril, it was believed that Mr. AU, the leader of Amalgam, did not know as much as Reynolds. Not to mention, this trip to the Middle East was set up to target Mithril from the beginning. However, even under Teresa's speculation, Ray Minkai almost figured out the truth of this trip to the Middle East, but he could not tell the truth. After all, Mallory's existence was still an absolute secret to Mithril. No one could believe that the messenger of justice, the founder of Mithril, who fought against extreme criminals such as arms reselling around the world, was actually the descendant of the founder of Amalgam. With Ray Minkai's brief explanation, Melissa and Cruz finally knew the ultimate purpose of this trip to the Middle East. So you're saying that we're just bystanders in this battle? Melissa heaved a sigh of relief as she sighed. She did not expect that the mission to stop the reselling of weapons of great lethality from the beginning would turn out to be like this. So, are we going to be spectators this time? Cruz's attention was on this. I'm afraid not. Although the target of the enemy's bait is not our Mithril, this battle still has to be fought. Ray Minkai could not help but sigh in his heart. After this battle, perhaps among the senior management of Amalgam, they would know that Mithril was the organization set up by Mallory. However, Ray Minkai thought that in the following time, Mr. AU, who tried to eliminate dissidents and completely control Amalgam, would be killed by Reynolds, so he let go of this sigh. Anyway, the enemy standing on the opposite side would be on Reynolds' side sooner or later. Therefore, it did not matter if he knew earlier or later. After the brief information disclosure, the crossbow and M9 set off again. At this time, Ray Minkai and the others were less than 10 kilometers away from the target. As long as the crossbow and M9 went all out, this distance was not far, and they would arrive in a short period of time. In other words, the battle was about to begin. The whistling of the wind continued. The hot wind blew the headscarf up and wantonly fluttered in the air. Under the red hair that fluttered in the wind was a face that was mostly covered by large sunglasses. "Madam, please go back to the house. It's cooler there." A middle-aged man in a suit, with a typical mustache and hair combed back, walked out of the house next door. Even though he was in the middle of a sandstorm, he insisted on having his shoes polished until they were shiny. He looked at the woman standing in front of him with scorching eyes. "Mr. O, how's the situation? According to the plan you mentioned before, the fish should have taken the bait by now." In the wind, the fluttering red hair twisted like a flame. Her face, which was covered by large sunglasses, slowly turned to the middle-aged man called Mr. AU. Please rest assured, everything will go on as usual. The fish have not been scared away. Looking at the sunglasses that reflected a ray of sunlight, Mr. Eu's heart burned with passion. Mr. O had seen with his own eyes how devastatingly beautiful the face hidden under the sunglasses was. Moreover, Mr. O was glad that he was able to do so. If he had not rushed his substitute, Qian Shanwu, to other places to inspect the situation on his behalf, he would not have been able to see this amazing woman in the first place. Is that so? Then let's wait and see. Mr. O, if your plan succeeds, then our cooperation can continue. The flame-like hair swept past Mr. Au's eyes. The graceful figure also went past Mr. Au and walked into the house, leaving Mr. Au standing alone on the edge of the house, looking at the convoy coming from afar. It was the troops arranged by Mr. Au. Mr. H.G., the old man should hand over his inheritance, lie in his coffin, and wait to go to the netherworld with this young man. Mr. Au clenched his fists tightly as he watched his troops enter their positions. Time gradually passed. Under the scorching sun, the pace of time seemed to slow down. Whether it was waiting or moving forward, both sides felt that time was very slow at this moment. It was not until a sharp whistle tore through the hot air that the slow time suddenly accelerated. Enemy attack. The moment the sharp shout sounded, a deafening warning also tore through the air, instantly bringing the desert scorched by the scorching sun into the flames of war. It's begun. Night. We're not the only ones who want to attack this place. On the edge of the desert that was ignited by the flames of war, 3 pairs of eyes were quietly observing the situation of the battle. Under their gaze, the figures that rushed into the enemy's camp from the west were actually 2 venoms painted gray and red. What's going on? Could it be that the infighting between Leonard and Mr. Au has begun? Chapter 365. The appearance of vicious venom. No, the King of Hell shocked everyone who followed Mr. O from this desert to set up a trap. Even Mr. O could not help but be stunned. As the mastermind who set up the trap, Mr. O naturally knew that the target he was ambushing would not have a body model like the King of Hell. This was because there were not many pilots in the amalgam who could control this type of body. In layman's terms, most of the pilots who could control the King of Hell were unfathomable in the eyes of ordinary people. Therefore, Mr. O had absolute reason to believe that the old man who should be rotting in his coffin would not be able to own a cutting-edge body like the King of Hell. Who is it? Is it that young boy? Mr. O's eyes flickered as his thoughts ran wild. According to his understanding of Reynold, this young boy did not seem to be the type to make things difficult for him at this time. However, if it was not Reynold, then who would suddenly appear at this time to set up a trap? No matter what Mr. O thought, the 2 kings of hell that had rushed to the periphery of the ambush circle were like 2 sharp arrows that ruthlessly wiped out all the ambushing troops on their way forward. Your Excellency, what should we do? Please give the order quickly. In the attack of the 2 kings of hell that could not distinguish between friend and foe, the soldiers who had yet to recover from the ambush hurriedly asked for help from Mr. O, who was standing behind them and watching the 2 kings of hell wreak havoc. What's wrong? Your Excellency, Mr. O, did the plan fail? At this time, Miss Q's voice also came from the house. It's okay. It's just a little mess. Madam. Mr. O's eyes flashed as he replied to Miss Q calmly. He then picked up the walkie-talkie hanging on his waist. Everyone, start attacking. No matter who the enemy is, kill it for me. Yes, Your Excellency. Under the command of Mr. O, the King of Hell was suddenly surrounded from all directions. Barbarians jumped out of the camouflage pits and raised their machine guns to shoot at the King of Hell. Amidst the sounds of gunfire that tore through the sky, soldiers carrying individual rocket launchers took advantage of the powerful firepower of the barbarians and quickly sneaked along the edge of the camouflage pit where the barbarians were hiding. They rushed towards the position of the 2 Hell Kings and raised their rocket launchers at the same time to fire at the Hell Kings. In the instant when dozens of tails of smoke rose into the air and swept across the sky, The continuous explosions immediately engulfed the two Hell Kings that had rushed into the enemy formation to fight. This scene stunned Melissa and Cruz, who were watching the battle from the sidelines. What a tacit cooperation. In less than a few minutes, whether it was the barbarians or the soldiers carrying individual rocket launchers, there was a deep tacit understanding between the two. They were able to complement each other in the interval of their firepower and weave a huge net to trap the enemy in and launch a fatal attack. This series of actions was not difficult to see that this was an offensive tactic developed against the AS. If the M9 team were to fall into such a siege tactic now. Thinking of this, cold sweat could not help but appear on the foreheads of Melissa and Cruz. On the other side, the M9 team of the Indian Ocean, who had a trace of contempt for this mission from the beginning, finally began to face up to the high risk of this mission. Moreover, in the next moment, the King of Hell that should have been annihilated by this terrible targeted tactic in their imagination actually erupted with a terrifying combat power that was enough to change the battlefield. Buzz! In an instant, a looming wave suddenly stirred up and pushed away the explosive flames that engulfed the King of Hell in the next second. Boom! There was the sound of something shattering. At the moment of the explosion, one gray and one red King of Hell appeared in the gradually dissipating sea of fire and scathed. Between them and the sea of fire, there was a layer of looming wall that was quickly pushing the sea of fire away until the sea of fire completely dissipated in midair. At this moment, under the cover of sparks and thick smoke, the two Kings of Hell seemed to really be demon kings that had returned from hell. Step by step, they walked toward the barbarians and soldiers that were surrounding them. Mr. AU did not give the order, but the barbarian pilots already knew what they should do and how to eliminate the enemy. Therefore, the previous tactic was quickly launched again. It's useless, Ray Minkai said softly. Lei Minkai was no stranger to that faintly discernible wall. Anyone who had successfully activated the Lambda Drive system would know that this was not a mysterious phenomenon, but a unique phenomenon when the Lambda Drive system was activated. In other words, the moment the King of Hell activated the Lambda Drive system, this unit that had been trained to use tactics against AS was doomed. If there was no third force involved. Boom! Suddenly, a terrible whistling sound exploded from the other side of the ambush circle. In the blink of an eye, a fireball that only left an afterimage in human vision exploded in the middle of the two Kings of Hell. Thick smoke rose into the air. In the blink of an eye, the two Kings of Hell were engulfed in it, but the result was still blocked by the power of the Lambda Drive system. It could not hurt the Kings of Hell at all. However, this was enough. This explosion bought a little time for the surrounding barbarians and soldiers to retreat, and gave the person who launched the surprise attack enough time to rush here and stop the two Kings of Hell from wreaking havoc. However, after this third force appeared from the thick smoke, the Indian Ocean team was once again surprised. The same body? How is this possible? Is this internal strife? Yes, just as Ray Minkai had guessed before. The moment the third force, which was the other two gray-green painted Kings of Hell, appeared, perhaps the internal strife of the amalgam had already begun. Knight, what should we do? Melissa, who also had the same thought, immediately asked. For Melissa, even for the Indian Ocean team hiding on the other side, this might be an opportunity. Whether it was to stand by and watch, or to take advantage of the aftermath of the battle between the Kings of Hell to capture the target, which was Mr. AU. At this moment, it was highly feasible. Wait a little longer. Ray Minkai was not willing to let go of such an opportunity. However, plans could never compare to the changes in reality. The Kings of Hell, who should have had the same performance, had already decided the outcome the moment they met. The two gray-green Kings of Hell, who represented the barbarians, were actually pierced through their chests by the long swords in the hands of the two Kings of Hell, one gray and one red. They were KO'd in one blow. Even if the wall activated by the Lambda Drive system was flashing on the blade of the longsword, it was useless. The wall of the Lambda Drive system, which should have been able to block countless cannonballs, was unable to block a longsword at this moment. How is this possible? Melissa realized that today's mission seemed to be going through a very exciting process. Melissa had seen and experienced the power of the lambda drive system with her own eyes, but she had never thought that the power of the lambda drive system would be so weak one day. The movements of that body looked very familiar. Ray Minkai frowned deeply. He actually felt that the movements of the Red King of Hell were a little familiar. However, no matter how Ray Minkai thought about it, he could not remember it in a short period of time. Buzz! Suddenly, the sound of mechanical operation came from the crossbow. Ray Minkai moved. He had also made up his mind in that instant. Yours too. Send out the signal. Execute Plan C. See? Night, wait. If we do that, it's too reckless. Before Melissa could react, the crossbow that Ray Minkai was piloting jumped high up from its hiding place. While in midair, it raised the 58mm shotgun in its hands and fired 6 shots at the 2 Hell Kings that were preparing to continue forward. Bang! 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 Under the rapid expansion of the bullets, the 2 Kings of Hell, who had just killed the same type of AS, had no choice but to stop and turn around to look at the crossbow that had safely landed. Both sides did not speak. The moment they confirmed that the other side was their enemy, they started fighting on the spot. As the silver hair fluttered, the Gray King of Hell raised its hand, and a gust of wind roared. The physical shock wave caused by the strong desire to attack directly pounced on the crossbow in an unreasonable manner, as if it would tear the crossbow apart in the next second. But Ray Minkai just narrowed his eyes, and the heat dissipation system behind the crossbow immediately activated. In the instant, the surrounding air temperature quickly rose to the point where it was enough to distort light. The wall appeared. Boom! The physical shock wave caused by the Gray King of Hell mercilessly hit the wall of the crossbow and set off an extremely terrifying explosion. In the midst of the shocking explosion, a tyrannical shock wave actually filled the surrounding potholes and flattened the barbarians that were destroyed by the 2 Kings of Hell. And the soldiers that were killed were all sent flying. Buzz! In the gust of wind that seemed to be able to tear apart space, a red afterimage suddenly appeared, turning a blind eye to the terrifying shock wave that was wreaking havoc in the surroundings and appeared behind the crossbow like a ghost. In its hand was a dagger that was flickering with cold light. Bang! The sound of the wind was suddenly dispersed by a loud sound of metal colliding, leaving only the sparks that burst out from the collision of 2 short weapons that were flickering with cold light. Repeating the same old trick? The Red King of Hell's intention was very simple. That was to take advantage of the opportunity created by the Gray King of Hell's attack to try to heavily injure the crossbow in one fell swoop. However, this trick had long been seen through by Ray Minkai. From the beginning, Ray Minkai was on guard against this. Therefore, the Gray and Red King of Hell's trick had no possibility of success. Clang! Suddenly, the dagger in the crossbow's hand lit up with a stream of light. The moment this stream of light appeared, it illuminated the Red King of Hell's prismatic head, but also scared the Red King of Hell back. Otherwise, in this situation where the distance was almost zero, a heavy blow to the lambda drive system of the crossbow would probably not end well. Similarly, when the Red King of Hell was scared back, the Gray King of Hell that was entangled with the crossbow also retreated continuously, directly retreating to a distance that was enough to confront the crossbow. Scare back? How is that possible? As soon as this thought appeared, it was immediately rejected by Ray Minkai. A pilot who could pilot the Hell King was not someone who was afraid of death. Otherwise, he would not be able to activate the lambda drive system on the Hell King. What Ray Minkai did not know was that the hands hidden behind the Red King of Hell were like pulling the lines on a puppet, one step at a time, controlling her to attack the crossbow. Come on, come on, come on, let me see the color of hatred. In the dark, a pair of huge hands trembled slightly above the Red King of Hell's head, and under this trembling, the Red King of Hell actually made the movements and actions imagined by the owner of the huge hands. A white body among the Red King of Hell, a crimson red light that looked like a drop of blood slowly lit up, illuminating the thin figure sitting in the driver's seat in the front, making him look particularly horrifying. Kill! 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 The thought of tearing the white body in front of it into pieces was incomparably strong and terrifying. Under this terrifying thought, the Lambda drive system actually erupted with unprecedented power. Pa! Under the guidance of the Lambda drive system, the surging power was like a tide that continuously spread out with the Red King of Hell as the center. Moreover, this tide-like power was crazily pressing toward the crossbow. The moment the sound of something breaking rang out, the Red King of Hell actually disappeared from its original position in the blink of an eye and rushed in front of the crossbow like lightning. Whoa! A burst of white light suddenly appeared between the two. At the moment when the two quickly exploded outwards to the maximum limit, it actually shrank inwards, once again gathering at the place where the two were in contact with each other. And then, boom! An explosion that was even bigger than the one caused by the barbarians' and infantry's joint attack exploded on the spot. No one knew what the crossbow and the Red King of Hell were doing at the moment of the explosion. The only thing they knew was that at the moment of the explosion, a small sun actually appeared in this desert, snatching away everyone's vision. Only when the rumbling explosion between heaven and earth gradually faded away did everyone's vision gradually recover. Is this the true power of the Lambda drive system? It's simply like the power of a fairy tale. On the other side, Melissa, who had hidden in a small ravine in time, stared blankly at the small sun that was slowly disappearing. Chapter 366. Unexpectedly, the King of Hell, and the crossbow that rushed into the battlefield halfway to fight with the King of Hell, gave Mr. AU the illusion that they were the ones who dominated the battle. This made Mr. AU, who had spent a lot of effort from the beginning to the end and did not hesitate to sacrifice some cost to leak information about himself and Miss Q to specific targets in a more natural way, feel embarrassed. Could it be that he, who had schemed against others, had become the target of others' schemes? Your Excellency, due to the crossbow that rushed out halfway and fought with the two King of Hell, Mr. AU's troops were able to get a chance to catch their breath. Mr. AU's trusted subordinates also asked Mr. AU for instructions again while incorporating the remaining soldiers. Wait a little longer. The appearance of the King of Hell may not be an accident. The other white body definitely did not come alone. Pay attention to the situation around you. Mr. AU was not stupid. When the King of Hell and the crossbow appeared one after another, they left him, the person who should have been the target, aside and stayed on the battlefield to fight. There must be other ways in this. Lambda drive system. Oof. Mr. AU's cold gaze swept across the same type of body that was instantly killed by the two King of Hell, one gray and one red. He did not expect that the pilot that he had spent so much effort to find would be so weak. In the house, Miss Q's gaze also passed through the window and fell on the crossbow. For some reason, this AS looked a little familiar. Al, yours too, in the other's current location? In the cockpit of the crossbow, Ray Minkai slowly exhaled. The impact just now had really caused Ray Minkai to suffer a small loss. The attack of the Red King of Hell in front of him was a little beyond Ray Minkai's expectations. Such an attack method, and that powerful strength, was completely different from the Gray King of Hell that he had encountered before, and even from the Gray King of Hell that was on the side to distract Ray Minkai's attention. We are now about 1 kilometer away from the target. According to the original plan, there should be less than 1 minute to launch the attack. AL, who was constantly monitoring the movements of Melissa and the others, immediately replied, 1 kilometer? It's just a matter of sprinting. Ray Minkai coldly snorted. Both of his hands began to move. Once again, he raised a 58mm shotgun in his hand and fired 3 consecutive shots at the Red Lord of Hell. However, these 3 consecutive shots were still blocked by the wall of the Lambda drive system. After all, it was a warhead enhanced by the Lambda drive system. It was not as good as breaking through the Red Hell King's wall. Surprised, Ray Minkai drove the crossbow backwards, tried to put some distance between them. However, The Grey Hell King, who was standing by the side, did not give the crossbow the chance to retreat. Before the crossbow could stabilize itself, the Grey Hell King suddenly appeared behind the crossbow with a dagger in his hand and fiercely stabbed the crossbow's back. It was yet another familiar scene. It was another familiar attack pattern. As an airframe equipped with a lambda drive system, in addition to the energy consumed in combat and daily operations, its heat dissipation system was the most important. Whether it was the Hell King or the crossbow, once there was a problem with their heat dissipation system, it meant that the airframe would be paralyzed on the spot. It could even put the pilot's life in danger. This move again, Rei Ming-Kai's eyes widened. An invisible energy wave was suddenly released from the crossbow, turning the 3-meter radius around the crossbow into an untouchable area. Buzz! The dagger in the Grey Hell King's hand hit an invisible wall and did not move forward at all. However, this was not a big deal to the Grey Hell King, because, from the beginning, its goal was not to kill the crossbow, but to restrain it. Now, the crossbow's movements had been restricted by it. Immediately after, the Red Hell King pulled out a dagger from the hanger on its back, jumped high, and directly slashed down from above where the crossbow could not see. Boom! The wall condensed by the lambda drive system dissipated with a loud bang. Under the cooperation of the two Hell Kings, one gray and one red, the crossbow's defense was broken just like that. Their daggers and daggers also touched the crossbow's armor at this moment. The crossbow was in a precarious situation. However, the crossbow's situation was only in a precarious situation. This was because whether it was the Grey Hell King's dagger or the Red Hell King's dagger that jumped high and slashed down, the crossbow used its left hand to tightly grab the Grey Hell King's wrist, blocking the dagger's advance. It also gave up the 58mm shotgun in its right hand at lightning speed, pulled out the long sword at its waist like lightning, and blocked the Red Hell King's dagger. The Grey Hell King's dagger did not pose much of a threat, but even if the Red Hell King's slash was blocked, the impact still spread throughout the crossbow's body from the collision between the blades, and then landed on the ground. Thus, on the ground where the crossbow stood, a spiderweb-like crack crazily tore the ground apart. Don't underestimate people too much. Rei Ming-Kai's eyes flashed. The crossbow first grabbed the Grey Hell King's wrist with its left hand, and a few cracks appeared. Seeing this, the Grey Hell King's pilot, who turned pale with fright, quickly waved the Grey Hell King's left fist, trying to rescue the Grey Hell King's right hand by besieging it. Otherwise, under the terrifying power of the crossbow that seemed to be able to crush the Grey Hell King's wrist, the Grey Hell King would definitely become the first injured person in this battle. Fortunately, Rei Ming-Kai's move was only an attempt to scare the Grey Hell King away. So when the Grey Hell King showed that it was about to retreat, the crossbow also made a feint under Rei Ming-Kai's control, forcing the Grey Hell King to retreat and attack the more threatening Red Hell King with full force. The long sword swept across the sky, and the powerful force of the crossbow instantly sent the Red Hell King, who was still in midair, flying. But the Red Hell King, who was sent flying, did not roll to the ground under the attack of the crossbow. Instead, it twisted its body in midair and cleverly threw the dagger in its hand towards the crossbow. Clang! The crossbow waved the long sword and blocked the dagger that was thrown towards it. It also raised its left foot and picked up the 58mm shotgun that it had abandoned earlier. It stretched out its left hand and held it firmly in its hand. In a flash, it aimed at the Red Hell King, who was still rolling in midair, and fired a shot. Bang! As the bullets whistled, the Red Hell King was in an extremely dangerous situation. However, even in the face of being in midair and unable to use its strength to exert its strength, the Red Hell King still showed a fearless look. This was because the Red Hell King's actions in the next second made Rei Ming-Kai reveal a trace of shock and seriousness. Facing the whistling bullets, the Red Hell King, who was in midair, only raised its hand slightly and unfolded the wall of the lambda drive system. Then, after landing safely on the ground, he raised his other hand and clasped his hands together. The bullet that had been blocked just now was destroyed by an invisible force. That action The characteristics of the lambda drive system determined that the pilot driving the body must be in a state of high concentration in order to be able to smoothly start it. Among the pilots who were equipped with a lambda drive system, everyone had their own unique way of concentrating. Some were normal, some were incomparably crazy, and there were also unique actions. And in Mecha's memory, there was probably only one person who could wave his palm or put his hands together when the lambda drive system was activated. That was 9 dragons. However, Mecha clearly remembered that 9 dragons had already been killed by him. Until a few minutes after 9 dragons' breathing stopped, Mecha still stayed by his side until he confirmed that there was no possibility of 9 dragons coming back to life. How is this possible? How can it be 9 dragons? As soon as this thought appeared, it was immediately suppressed by Mecha, because the enemy's attack was coming. As soon as that conspicuous and unique attack appeared, it meant that the attack was bound to come. Boom! Above the desert, as several ring-shaped gases spread, a terrifying physical impact created a deep ravine on the desert ground, and at the same time, it carried countless sand and stones as it went straight for the crossbow. Ow! Defense! Mecha focused his mind, and the front end of the crossbow suddenly opened up a wall. Boom! Sand and stones flew, smoke and dust filled the sky, and that terrifying physical shock wave. This was not a single blow. Instead, the Red Lord of Hell struck again after the first blow. This cycle continued until a deep and huge crater appeared at the location of the crossbow amidst the terrifying physical shock waves. Only then did the Red Lord of Hell's movement stop. Rolling sand and dust, every time the braids behind the Red Hell King's head fluttered crazily, it could raise the surrounding temperature to nearly 100 degrees. This was not because the Red Hell King had confirmed the destruction of the crossbow, but because of the heating effect caused by the explosion of the lambda drive system just now, forcing the Red Hell King to stop moving, quietly waiting for the heat that almost brought the Red Hell King to a standstill hell to dissipate. The Red Hell King was unable to move, but the Gray Hell King could still move. Thus, after confirming the state of the Red Hell King, the Gray Hell King turned around and rushed into the sand that had yet to dissipate, as if it wanted to confirm the state of the crossbow. But not long after, the Gray Hell King that had disappeared into the sand appeared again. However, it was different from its previous state of full alert. At this moment, the King of Gray Hell had lost all 4 of its limbs and was being carried out of the sand. And the Gray Hell King that had its limbs cut off, leaving only its prismatic head and body, was the right hand of the crossbow. Amidst the muffled sound of sand hitting the metal armor, the crossbow carried the Gray Hell King and walked not far in front of the Red Hell King. Hiss! The Red Hell King's heat dissipation had not been completed. The crazily dancing braids were still emitting the heat from the Red Hell King's body into the air. Looking at the faint distortion in the air around the Red Hell King's body, Mecha snorted coldly. With a move of his right hand, the crossbow threw the Red Hell King that he was carrying towards the Red Hell King. Rustle! The heavy Red Hell King fell heavily to the ground, and as it rolled, it left a scratch on the ground until it was stepped on by the Red Hell King. Clang! After throwing the Red Hell King over, the crossbow raised his long sword and pointed at the Red Hell King. Facing the enemy that might be the 9 Dragons' corpse, Mecha did not speak, nor did he try to intercept the communication channel of the Red Hell King. The only thing he had to do was to kill the enemy in front of him. Go! Good. The provocation of the crossbow had undoubtedly infuriated the Red Hell King's pilot, especially after stepping on the human stick teammate that was thrown over by the crossbow in the cockpit of the Red Lord of Hell. The crimson light seemed to be like a sea of blood, drowning the thin figure that was piloting the Red Lord of Hell. Kill! The moment a sharp cry sounded in the cockpit, the Red Hell King that was stepped on by the Red Hell King was stomped to death. Boom! In the roar, the Red Hell King did not die in the hands of Mecha. Instead, it was stomped to death by its teammate, the Red Hell King. Red. The red light that was like blood filled the eyes of the Red Hell King's pilot. Especially after killing his teammate, In this sea of red light that filled the eyes, a face appeared faintly. "Kill him." The face said so. Thus, the Red Hell King moved and disappeared in an instant. Like a cannonball, it swept across the desert and rushed in front of the crossbow with an extremely terrifying hurricane. Buzz, Ray Minkai, who was unwilling to sit still and wait for death, moved his right hand, and the crossbow immediately returned the favor. He waved his right fist and went straight to the Red Hell King that was pouncing on him. In the blink of an eye, the fist of the Red Hell King and the fist of the crossbow, they collided together fiercely. In the middle of these two fists, two terrifying energies that contained astonishing energy were wantonly attacking everything that could be destroyed by them. At this moment, the battle between the Red Hell King and the crossbow was like a great battle between gods and demons in myths. The soldiers hiding in the distance were dumbfounded. The existence of the lambda drive system was confidential. Even the amalgam that had been mass-produced did not have the idea of making it public, let alone the mithril that knew little about the lambda drive system. Therefore, the Red Hell King and the crossbow, who had mysterious and invisible power with just a raise of their hands and feet, had already become gods and demons in myths at this moment. Kill him, kill him, kill him. Terrifying, and crazy thoughts continued to surge out of the increasingly red cylinder behind the cockpit, hitting the mind of the thin figure sitting in front of it like a tide. That was the wail of the undead. That was the wail of the undead. That was the curse of the undead. In this increasingly crazy wave, the consciousness that was on the verge of collapse finally crossed the line of collapse. Kacha! From the mind, it was also the sound from the Red Hell King's body. It became the bell that ended the battle. The Red Hell King crashed. Chapter 367. Beautiful, beautiful. It's so beautiful. Such a beautiful soul is the most precious treasure in this world. As the fierce wind caused by the confrontation of the lambda drive system raged on the battlefield, the clown standing on the cliff in the distance waved his arms in ecstasy, dancing and shouting from the bottom of his heart. This is it. This is it. Under the influence of hatred, the black soul gradually turned into a flame-like soul. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. On the terrifying white face was a crazily twisted smile, as well as tears that hung under his eyes, becoming more and more twisted. The increasingly fierce wind did not stop the dancing clown from his exaggerated movements. He even twisted his limbs more and more to express the joy in his heart. However, just as the terrifying clown's face was about to twist to the extreme, the fierce wind that was wreaking havoc on the field suddenly stopped. In the rapidly calming sand and dust, there was the strong crossbow that was still in its punching posture, and the Red Hell King that was frozen on the spot and suddenly fell to the ground. No! Seeing the Red Hell King fall to the ground inexplicably, the twisted clown was shocked, especially when he saw the strong crossbow trying to capture the Red Hell King. His ecstatic and twisted face was instantly replaced by a cold face. "Bring her back." In the sound of the wind, a cold voice sounded from under the clown's face. Then, a ripple suddenly appeared in the air behind the clown. Then, Ray Minkai, who was trying to retrieve the Red Hell King so that he could investigate, suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. Moreover, this foreboding feeling was actually somewhat familiar. Without thinking too much, Ray Minkai made a prompt decision to control the crossbow and quickly retreat nearly 10 meters. Boom! A series of explosions brushed past the rapidly retreating figure of the strong crossbow and continuously blew up the ground. It was not until the strong crossbow was at least 100 meters away from the Red Hell King that this strange explosion gradually stopped. Attack! AL, can you find the source of the attack? Ray Minkai's spirit was tense. In the series of explosions just now, Ray Minkai did not see any traces of artillery shells, nor did he find any signs of energy weapons such as light beams, lasers, or other energy weapons. Unable to confirm the source of the attack, the only thing that is certain is that these explosions were not caused by pre-buried landmines. The result was as Ray Minkai expected. Even AL, who was monitoring the battle situation at all times, could not find the source of the attack. However, this was inevitable. When the attack happened just now, AL did not have time to send out a warning. Suddenly, AL, who did not find the attack just now. Warning. Radar detected the enemy's reaction. Position confirmed. 0 o'clock. Number is 1. 0 o'clock. 0000. Isn't that where the Red Hell King is? Lei Minkai focused his gaze and looked in the direction of the Red Hell Sovereign King. On the cratered ground that was hit by the invisible attack, a mech was faintly discernible. ECS system. Moreover, as the outline became clearer, the body that took the initiative to remove the ECS system turned out to be another Hell King. How many Hell Kings are hidden around here? Lei Minkai furrowed his brows when he saw the mech appear beside the Red King of Hell, ignoring the existence of the crossbow and slowly bending down to pick up the Red King of Hell that had lost all of its reactions. However, before Lei Minkai could even take action to resolve his doubts, the invisible attack from before appeared once again. AL still did not respond. What was able to give Ray Minkai a warning was still his own instinct for danger. Boom! The attack that could not be captured and could only rely on Ray Minkai's instinct to avoid continued to chase after the crossbow. At the same time, it also created an opportunity for the Hell King that picked up the Red Hell King, allowing it to escape from the crossbow while carrying a burden of the same weight. Al, haven't you found the source of the attack? Ray Minkai gritted his teeth and relied on instinct to dodge the attack while sending out AL. No, Knight, I can't find the source of the attack. From the radar, the surrounding situation is normal. This is abnormal. AL's voice was still steady. Nonsense. Of course it's abnormal. As soon as these words came out, Ray Minkai's voice suddenly became mute, because he had already thought of a possibility. Fallen Angel. In the whole story of the All-Metal Tide, only Reynolds' Fallen Angel could launch such an incredible attack as an invisible attack. Could it be? Did Reynolds come to this battlefield in person? The answer was impossible to know. Under the pursuit of the invisible attack, Ray Minkai could barely dodge. Moreover, when Ray Minkai was forced back by this invisible attack, the newly appeared Hell King did not hesitate to pick up the Red Hell King and quickly retreated into the distance. When the ECS system took effect again, the continuous invisible attack finally stopped. Obviously, this was just an attack purely to prevent Ray Minkai from doing anything harmful to the Red Hell King. Ow! Yes! Knight! When the words came to his mouth, Ray Minkai suddenly stopped talking. Forget it. Al, what about yours too and the others? Even if they locked onto the mech that took the Red Hell King away, the attack from nowhere would still appear. For Ray Minkai, who lacked information, even if he could use the power of the Lambda Drive system to fight against it, he couldn't guarantee that other mechs would not appear during the chase. At the end of the day, Lei Minkai and the others' mission was not to become the Red King of Hell. The appearance of the Red Hell King was an accident from beginning to end. We have broken through the enemy's blockade and are now pursuing the remaining enemies. According to the follow-up intelligence summary, we have completed the encirclement of the mission target. AL summarized the information he had received before, but because of the fierce battle, he was unable to tell Lei Minkai the first thing he did. Understood. Then, AL expand the radar search range and pay special attention to any traces that may be left behind when the ECS system is activated. Understood. Knight. On the other side, the battle was still ongoing. However, it was different from the continuous battles on Ray Minkai's side. Under the joint attack of the 6M9S built with mithril technology that was 10 years ahead of the world, the barbarian troops that had been defeated by the sudden appearance of the Red Hell King could not escape the disaster of destruction. Boom! Boom! The barbarians fell one after another and turned into flames that soared into the sky, as well as thick smoke that filled the entire battlefield. Under the burning flames from the wreckage of the barbarians, the soldiers who had already collapsed dropped their weapons and raised their hands to surrender to the M9S that ignored them. The battle in front of her was so smooth that it was unbelievable. Melissa couldn't help but wonder if this was still a battle with the enemy, Amalgam. However, when he turned around, he found that the commotion caused by Lei Mingkai was extremely shocking. Yours too. Target fleet found. Our big boss seems to be sitting in the fleet and retreating from this battlefield. What should we do? When the battle started, Cruz, who had occupied the high ground first, sent a message. Bill, how's the situation on your side? After Melissa received Cruz's message, she immediately went to the Indian Ocean M9 team that was flanking from the other side. We have arrived at our position. We can start the operation at any time. After witnessing the frightening battle between the crossbow and the King of Hell, the M9 team in the Indian Ocean finally put away their arrogant attitude and obediently cooperated with Melissa and the others. Although it was a bit embarrassing, at least it was much better than the original ending of being completely annihilated. This was despite the fact that this M9 team had unconsciously managed to avoid the fate of being wiped out. Yours 6. Seize the time. The battle on Knight's side seems to have ended. Melissa noticed that the movement on Rei Mingkai's side seemed to have disappeared. Understood. Cruz, who had been preparing for a long time, did not let Melissa down. The moment Melissa gave the order, Cruz, who had already locked onto the target fleet, immediately operated his beloved machine and fired 2 attacks. The 2 attacks respectively blew up the first car at the front of the fleet and the last car at the back of the fleet. When the 2 unlucky cars rolled in the air and landed, the fleet that was trying to escape from the battlefield stopped and was also surrounded by the Indian Ocean M9 team that rushed out from a flank. Mission completed. Target confirmed. Through the high-magnification sniper scope, Cruz confirmed the middle-aged man who slowly walked out of the bulletproof car in the middle of the convoy with his hands raised high under the muzzle of the M9. At the same time, the sons of Dan Slave cruising in the ocean also received a report from the front. Captain, yours 2 sent back a report. We have completed this mission. Although there were some twists and turns on the way, the target has been captured. Deputy Captain Richard walked to Teresa, who was sitting in the middle of the bridge, with the report from the sons of Dan Slave, and said softly, "Is that so? We didn't suffer any casualties, right?" Teresa heaved a sigh of relief when she received the news. "Yes, Captain. According to the preliminary report, it is confirmed that there were no casualties. However, regarding some of the matters that appeared in the report, Knight mentioned that he wants to personally communicate with you in an encrypted manner." Richard said what he knew word by word. "Knight wants to communicate with me in an encrypted manner?" Teresa was taken aback for a moment. Then she nodded and gave an order. "Transfer the communication line to my room. I will go now." "Yes, Captain." Compared to Rei Mingkai, who was fighting and killing on the front line, the White Cat's life in State Zero was very comfortable. If she was not lying on the balcony, she was lying on the top of the refrigerator, watching Mira, who was wholeheartedly devoted to the development of a new body, busying herself back and forth. This situation continued until Mira suddenly asked to go back to school. "Miss Mira, please be careful." As the old butler who took care of Myra's daily life, Jack did not ask about Myra's whim. Instead, he quickly took care of everything for Mira and personally sent Mira to the car. Of course, White Cat, who ran into the car on her own, was not within Jack's service scope. During this period of time, Jack had seen too many of the White Cat's illogical actions. If one day, White Cat suddenly spoke in front of Jack, this old butler would not be too surprised. They did not speak for the rest of the journey. White Cat, State Zero, knew about Myra's plan. As the only bystander who watched how Mira designed the exclusive body for Rei Mingkai from the beginning to the end, White Cat, State Zero, knew what the bottleneck that Mira was facing was. However, White Cat, State Zero, could not tell Mira what to do. After all, as a metal creature with mysterious powers, these questions were just innate instincts for State Zero of White Cat. Therefore, Myra's whim this time was probably to get in touch with Chidori, who was also a whisperer, and try to get a breakthrough point from her. The car drove quickly and steadily on the road. Mira, who was sitting in the middle, silently looked at the scenery outside the car. No one knew what she was thinking. Just as the car drove to the last intersection before reaching Zemdai High School, an accident suddenly happened. An ear-piercing braking sound suddenly tore apart the tranquility of the morning, followed by a burst of panic screams and a huge impact that fiercely struck people's hearts. Bang! Amidst the impact, a heavy-duty truck full of goods appeared in front of them from the right side of the intersection in a flip position. In a burst of sparks, it slammed into several cars that were too late. After the inertia gradually disappeared, it stopped in the middle of the intersection, blocking the road to Zemdai High School. TSK. Miss Mira, please sit properly. There seems to be a small situation now. I'm afraid we can't go to school for the time being. The driver was hired by Old Jack at a high price. When the skilled driver saw the sudden appearance of the heavy-duty truck that blocked the road ahead, he immediately realized something. I'm counting on you, Mr. Victor. A trace of fear suddenly rose in Myra's heart, but it gradually calmed down after the white cat, State Zero, stretched out its paw and patted her shoulder. The driver sitting in front did not notice Myra's abnormality. He was already concentrating on the situation on both sides of the road and did not have much energy to observe Myra's state. He stepped on the accelerator. The car that Mira was in suddenly accelerated and tried to pass through the alley on the other side, turning back in the direction of the residential area. Coincidentally, this scene was also seen by Chidori and Xiangliang Sosuke, who were just attracted by the sudden car accident. That's the transfer student, Mira. Xianyao was about to cry out in alarm. That direction, why did she go back? Isn't she going to school? Xiangliang Sosuke, who was standing at the side, was stunned at first. Then he connected the car accident and the car that Mira was in together. Not good. Someone is targeting Mira. This is an attack. However, even if he guessed the answer, Xiangliang Sosuke could not immediately provide support to Mira. This was because, right now, there was another whisper standing beside him, Xianyao. If in the next moment, when Xiangliang Sosuke was hesitating, gunshots suddenly sounded. Da-da-da-da. The instinct that was forged from life and death on the battlefield saved Xiangliang Sosuke and Chidori from the muzzle of the gun at this critical moment. What's going on? Someone fired? Chidori, who was pulled to the back of the alley by Xiangliang Sosuke, was unable to react. Attack. No, it's a kidnapping. Student Chidori, this is an attack against you, no? It should be an attack against you. Now please do as I say. Otherwise, we are all finished. Xiangliang Sosuke was unable to make a choice. Because, in front of his eyes, there were already enemies who were trying to kidnap Chidori. As for Mira, Xiangliang Sosuke could only hope that Rei Minkai would be prepared. Because in the following time, Xiangliang Sosuke's time would become very precious and intense. Chapter 368. In the silent captain's room, Teresa quietly guarded the table, waiting for a communication from the front. Suddenly, the signal light representing the communication connection lit up. Teresa immediately pressed the button to connect the communication and said, "I'm Teresa. Knight, is it you?" On the other end of the communication, Rei Minkai's voice sounded. "Yes, Colonel. I'm Knight. Is the current line secure?" Teresa frowned slightly. She seemed to think that Rei Minkai was a bit too cautious. But she still made a promise. "Knight, this is my personal encrypted channel. The chances of it being bugged are very low." "Understood. Then let's begin." When Rei Minkai's voice sounded again, he told Teresa some of the information he found in the previous battle. After quietly listening to Rei Minkai's explanation, Teresa did not immediately speak. Instead, she pondered for a moment and roughly sorted out her thoughts before slowly speaking. "Knight, what do you think is the probability of internal strife in the amalgam?" 60%. Rei Minkai, who had a clear understanding of the development of internal strife in the amalgam, only gave a safe answer. 60%? That's a high enough probability. In this way, it shows that the amalgam is not a monolithic organization. Teresa obviously had some confidence, but she did not continue to delve into this aspect for the time being. Instead, she changed the topic. So what's going on with Mr. AU? According to Knight, this person is not as simple as he looks. Yes, this person is probably a substitute. Substitute. When she heard this, Teresa's voice was slightly higher. But when Teresa thought about it, it was indeed possible for a similar situation to occur. Although Teresa and others already knew that the ultimate enemy of Mithril was the amalgam, their understanding of the internal situation of the amalgam was mostly derived from the information collected by Ray Minkai and the information collected by Mithril's own intelligence department over a long period of time. A doppelganger? After getting the result, Teresa sighed slightly. It seems that the enemy is far more difficult to deal with than we thought. As she spoke, Teresa pinched her hair braid and smiled. However, I have an idea now. Knight, can you guess? Or rather, you were planning something similar from the very beginning. Ray Minkai smiled and praised Teresa without hiding anything. As expected of the goddess of wisdom. That's right. My idea was to use this man who might be a substitute to lure the snake out of its hole. I believe that the appearance of this substitute is a trap that the enemy has set for us. Teresa pinched her braid and muttered to herself. Very likely. In that case, perhaps we could take a gamble. The enemy has gone to such great lengths to set up this trap. I'm afraid they're targeting our pill slaves' children. Teresa's lips curled up slightly. Then, let's do as they wish. At this moment, Ray Minkai heard a ringing sound from Teresa's side. Yes, I'm Teresa. Got it. With the sound of the communication being hung up, Teresa's voice sounded again. Knight, unexpected situation. Is Mira under attack? What Teresa didn't expect was that before she could say what the so-called unexpected situation was, Ray Minkai had already pointed it out. Oh, Knight, you don't seem surprised. Did you expect Mira to be attacked from the beginning? In fact, Ray Minkai only finished half of her sentence, but he already knew what Teresa meant by the second half of her sentence. Mira is a whisper. Even if she is attacked once or twice, the enemy will not give up on an existence like a whisperer. Therefore, Myra's attack was inevitable. I believe you have some understanding of this, Colonel. Ray Minkai's words made Teresa silent for a moment. In that case, Knight must have arranged enough means to ensure Myra's safety. When she spoke again, Teresa once again changed the topic to Myra's safety. Yes, to a certain extent, it is comparable to the power of the son of Dan's slave. With it by Myra's side, I won't have any worries about Myra's safety. On the contrary, I will worry about the enemy, whether they will be tortured to death. Ray Minkai's worry made Teresa slightly surprised. She didn't think that Ray Minkai would be so sure that Mira would be safe and sound. At this moment, in a corner of the world that Teresa couldn't see, the car carrying Mira and the White Cat Zero was speeding on a highway. Miss Mira, sit tight. I'm afraid we can't return to the community now. The driver, who made the prompt decision to evacuate after the accident at the intersection, once again showed his decisiveness. At the previous highway entrance, which was the one closest to the residential area, the driver suddenly felt that something was wrong and decisively changed the timing of entering the highway, thus making the ambush at the previous highway entrance ineffective. However, because of this, they were chased by a large fleet of cars, and, from the great movement behind them, there seemed to be S's appearance. It's so lively. Compared to the extremely tense driver, the White Cat Zero sitting in the back seat was much more leisurely. After calming Myra's slightly panicked emotions, the White Cat Zero was like an audience sitting in front of a screen, carefully enjoying the racing show. In the midst of its excitement, it even wagged its tail. The chase became more and more intense. This driver, who was personally invited by Old Jack, was indeed capable. He actually relied on this car, which was no different from other luxury cars except for its bulletproof function, to deal with the criminals chasing behind for so long. He also forced the criminals to directly expose the AS with ECS, regardless of the danger of being discovered by the local army. The appearance of the leading dark red AS immediately caused Myra's emotions to fluctuate again. King of Hell. No, it's not the King of Hell. In the next second, the White Cat Zero denied Mira. As an opponent who had personally dealt with the King of Hell, the White Cat Zero naturally knew the characteristics of the body. What's more, this body did not have the smell of the King of Hell that the White Cat Zero was quite disgusted with. Mira, get down. All of a sudden, State White Cat Zero shouted. A flame followed closely and instantly engulfed the car. Boom! The instantaneous explosion of the fireball violently lifted the car high from the back. The violent impact of the explosion made the car, which was still fearless in the face of a hail of bullets, but could not survive the heavy firepower, tumbled from midair and fell heavily in the middle of the highway. And the driver, who tried his best to escape with Mira from the hands of these criminals, finally fainted in the impact of the violent explosion. Fortunately, except for falling into a coma due to the impact, the poor driver did not have any other major problems. Because, at the moment of the explosion, the White Cat Zero, who was already prepared, immediately protected the poor driver and Mira. However, there was a difference in the strength of protection. As Mira, who Ray Minkai cared about, the White Cat Zero naturally protected her properly and did not suffer any damage. And the driver was able to keep his life. The White Cat Zero felt that it did not do much. Mira, come out. At the side of the open door, the White Cat Zero squatted in the middle of the burning gasoline and narrowed its eyes slightly. It seemed that the flames on the gasoline made the White Cat Zero very comfortable. Although Mira was a little surprised, after all, she had lived with the White Cat Zero for a period of time and was naturally accustomed to the White Cat Zero's abnormal behavior. Therefore, Mira did not dare to delay and quickly unfastened the seat belt on her body and left the car that was gradually spread by the flames. Mr. Driver, as soon as Mira saw the flame, she immediately shouted nervously, "Don't worry, Mira. These small flames can't break through that layer of defense. Now let's worry about ourselves." The White Cat Zero raised its paw and waved back and forth in the rapidly rising flames. It turned back to look at the approaching bandits and the Crimson AS behind the convoy. The attack that blew up the car just now came from this Crimson AS. Mira also saw this AS. She did not panic. Instead, she picked up the White Cat, State Zero, and ran away. Moreover, she said as she ran, "Sir Zero, the faster we leave this place, the safer Mr. Driver will be, right?" The White Cat Zero nodded. "Yes, the target of this group of bandits is no doubt you. As long as you leave this place, the poor driver will naturally not be of much use. Moreover, other than the two of us, the bandits will probably think that the poor driver will be buried in the sea of fire." "Yes. Okay." Immediately after, a large number of bandits and several AS chased after the poor girl began to play out. On the other side, Sosuke Xiangliang, who was also attacked, put down the satellite phone that had just ended the call. This was a new safety point specially set up by Mithril under Ray Minkai's reminder. He did not expect it to come in handy in such a situation. According to Sosuke Xiangliang's memory, this safety point had only been set up for less than half a month. It's all thanks to Knight's reminder. Although this safety point had just been set up and came in handy, Sosuke Xiangliang was very satisfied. "Student Chidori, please stay here and don't go out. This place is safe." Sosuke Xiangliang had already gone back and forth to check the safety point. The result was reassuring. The bandits who launched the attack did not discover this place, and it was likely that they would not be able to discover this safety point in a short period of time. This way, Sosuke Xiangliang had more choices. "Student Sosuke Xiangliang, you want to save student Mira?" Chidori, who was vaguely aware of something, keenly captured the key point. "Of course. Student Chidori. Student Mira is also the target of this attack. Now that our strength is unable to reinforce in time, my actions might become the turning point in this kidnapping incident." As Sosuke Xiangliang spoke, he touched the wall beside him. Then, in front of Chidori's shocked eyes, a wall opened by Sosuke Xiangliang was actually filled with all kinds of firearms. There were so many types that Chidori wanted to produce that this so-called safety point was an arsenal with the name Safety Point. Sosuke, Xiangliang ignored Chidori's shock and quickly chose the guns and ammunition that might be used, then prepared to turn around and leave. Student Chidori, stay here. I have already sent a request for help to my teammates. I believe that soon someone will come to support me. However, you must know that if it's someone you don't know, don't make a sound. After finishing his instructions, Sosuke, Xiangliang left without looking back, leaving behind Chidori, who was still at a loss. Cha! 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 Heavy footsteps messily stepped on the pile of dead leaves, making this quiet forest particularly noisy. Especially after the AS team led by the Crimson AS entered, the flock of frightened birds shrouded the forest with a layer of ominous aura. Master Zero, what should we do next? In the forest, Mira followed White Cat Zero's instructions and ran all the way until he reached his current position before stopping. Let's rest for a while first. For a while, those guys won't be able to catch up. White Cat Zero glanced at the messy footsteps behind Mira and let the exhausted Mira rest for a while. This distance was nothing for Rei Minkai, but for Mira, who had not fully recovered, it was a severe test. Letting Mira sit on a withered tree to rest for a while, State White Cat Zero jumped down from Mira's arms, and with Mira as the center, it began to walk back and forth within a radius of 100 meters. It seemed to be setting something up. Not long after, a burst of noisy voices came from not far away. The enemy had caught up. Hey, they left really quickly. White Cat Zero glanced at the direction of the voices and smiled coldly. Master Zero, I've rested enough. Mira, who subconsciously thought that White Cat Zero would let him continue to run, quickly stood up. No, Mira, you better sit there and wait. To Mira's surprise, White Cat Zero actually changed its previous attitude and let Mira stay in place. Surprised? I was just trying to avoid some trouble just now. Now, other than us, there are only those bandits and AS left in this forest. So, I don't need to worry about anything. White Cat Zero let out a low roar, which made those bandits, who had just walked out of the forest and appeared in front of Mira, tremble. What? It's a cat. From the sound of it, the bandits thought that they would encounter a lion in this forest that should not have appeared here. But from a visual, the bandits saw a cute little white cat blocking their target, Mira, and baring its fangs and claws at them. This great contrast made the bandits laugh out loud, especially after they repeatedly confirmed that other than Mira and the cute little white cat, they were the only ones left here. These criminals, who had committed all kinds of crimes, became even more rampant. However, just when the bandits thought that victory was in their hands and that the mission was about to be completed, another low roar sounded. Roar! This roar seemed to be earth-shattering, and in an instant, it made the bandits lose all sense of hearing, leaving only the dizziness and the feeling of powerlessness. When they finally struggled out of the dizziness, the cute little white cat was gone. However, a steel lion that was taller than an adult, had a huge and mighty steel head, and carried a pair of long swords on its back, had appeared in front of the bandits at some point in time, and was firmly protecting Mira behind it. Chapter 369. Lion, Lion. The bandits, who were enjoying the chase, were stunned when they saw the steel lion appear in front of them. However, they soon burst into laughter. As bandits who fought on the edge of life and death and worked for the amalgam, they naturally had no lack of opportunities to interact with the AS, or even the King of Hell. Compared to the Sovereign King of Hell, who had great lethality, this seemingly mighty big guy in front of him, who let out a low roar, was just a frightening iron lion. However, they did not know how this steel lion appeared in front of them. Ha ha ha, what a scary toy. Hey, look, this little girl actually took out her own toy. Are you guys scared? Surprised. The bandits also felt that they had seen through Mira's trick and could not help but laugh. Sir State Zero, Mira, who was protected by the steel lion, shouted in fear. As Mira was the closest to State Zero, she could not help but be affected by the impact of the white cat's release of its instincts. Mira, don't worry. It's me. This is also one of my original bodies. The steel lion's transformation continued. While he was conversing with Mira, the steel lion that was taller than an adult had grown to nearly 3 meters tall, and its length from head to tail had also increased to nearly 10 meters. Furthermore, the paint on its body had changed from its original white color to a white steel head, blue limbs, and a ferocious golden claw that gleamed with a cold light. Especially when the steel lion's body was completely fixed at 3 meters tall and 10 meters long. The pair of long swords on its back suddenly spread out to both sides. The blades of the swords were pointed at the bandits, who were still commenting on the steel lion's transformation. Roar! The white cat had seen the stupidity of humans many times. The bandits in front of him, who thought that they had surrounded him and Mira, were really ignorant and arrogant. However, among this group of arrogant bandits, there was a clear-headed person. That person was the pilot, Zate, who was piloting the Crimson AS with a small horn on its head. This pilot, who came from the Middle East, a land that had been ravaged by war for decades, would not be like those bandits who thought that they had the overall situation under control in this situation. That beast is not a toy. Once this thought surfaced in his mind, Zate knew that he could no longer laugh like his arrogant teammates. Buzz, the Crimson AS, which was the Phantom that Zate was piloting, suddenly raised the Gatling Vulcan in its hands. The sudden action of the Gatling gun that had sent the car flying gave the criminals standing nearby a fright. Hey, Zayat, what are you trying to do? Don't you know that this weapon of yours can crush a human to pieces in an instant? The bandits, who were afraid that Zayat would go crazy and smash Mira into pieces, shouted one after another. Zayat was silent for a moment. In the end, he controlled the Phantom to put down the Gatling Vulcan cannon in its hands. However, this steel lion that had appeared out of nowhere had already blocked their path. If they did not deal with it, they would not be able to complete their mission. Therefore, although they were arrogant, the bandits still had professional standards. After confirming that Zayat would not go crazy and shoot randomly, the bandits immediately split into 2 groups and tried to use firepower to investigate the steel lion situation. Fire! With the order, the semi-automatic rifles in the hands of the bandits suddenly erupted with continuous gunshots. Bullets whistled through the air as they rushed toward the steel lion in front of them. Ding ding dang dang. Amidst the gunshots, amidst the hail of bullets, the steel lion that was being targeted by at least 20 bandits did not move half a step. Instead, it stood in place and allowed the bandits to shoot. TSK, this toy skin is really thick. Our bullets can't penetrate its armor. What the hell is this thing? The bandits could not help but be shocked when they saw more and more sparks on the steel lion's body, but they could not effectively penetrate the armor on its body. At the same time, the other group of bandits who realized that their guns could not threaten the steel lion took advantage of the cover of their teammates' firepower and quietly tried to circle around the steel lion's back to launch a sneak attack. However, their actions had already been seen through by State Lion Zero. Mira, get down. State Lion Zero was not afraid of the shooting of individual semi-automatic weapons. A cold light flashed through its cold electronic eyes. The moment Mira got down, the long tail behind it swung across the air, and the tip of the tail evolved into 2 machine guns. The gunshots, without warning, shattered the bandits' plan. No one would have thought that the steel lion that looked like a toy would actually take the initiative to shoot first. In the blink of an eye, the bandits who were trying to circle around were scattered and almost destroyed. Roar! The machine gun muzzle on the tail was still smoking, and the steel lion roared again. It seemed to be a warning. It also seemed to be showing off its strength. Damn it! Kill it! The bandits, who lost a detour team in an instant, immediately adopted a more intense and powerful attack. Boom! The unique roar of the individual rocket launcher tore through the sky and flew directly toward the steel lion. However, a cold light flashed. The rocket that whistled through the sky was actually split in half. Boom! In the flames of the rocket launcher that died before it could succeed, Everyone saw the long sword on the back of the steel lion shining with a cold light. Without a doubt, the culprit that split the rocket launcher in half was the long sword shining with a cold light. Retreat. Find an opportunity to attack. This scene had already confirmed the premonition in Zait's heart. The steel lion that appeared out of nowhere was not something that the infantry could deal with. Even if the infantry still had a lot of rocket launchers in their hands, Zait did not have much hope for these rocket launchers. As the bandits advanced and retreated, the phantom driven by Zait and the other two phantoms were in front of the steel lion. Seeing this situation, State of the Lion Zero sneered. Turn-based? Then, come on. But before the battle began, State Lion Zero turned his head slightly, not afraid of exposing his visual blind spot to the enemy. Mira, come up. If we fight later, I may not be able to take care of you. As he spoke, two slightly bright lights poured down from the right side of the steel lion's head and fell at Myra's feet. Although Mira was somewhat puzzled, she still obediently lifted the script and stepped on the light. In an instant, after the light in front of Myra's eyes flashed, she found herself sitting in the position between the steel lion's neck and front shoulder. State Lion Zero? This is? Sit tight. Mira, this is a position that no one else has sat in except for Kai and his little princess. State Lion Zero smiled and suddenly exerted force on his four limbs. Like a cannonball, he took the lead and rushed toward the enemy. Spread out. At the moment when the steel lion exploded, Zait, who was already prepared, suddenly shouted. Then, he once again controlled the Crimson Phantom to raise the Gatling Vulcan in its hands and shoot wildly. Hum! The roar of the Vulcan cannons rang out crazily as the bullets rained down on the steel lion that was pouncing towards them. However, this seemingly powerful storm was blocked by an invisible wall. The dancing sparks were the unwillingness and anger of the bullets as they hit the invisible and impenetrable wall. Lambda drive system? How is that possible? As someone who had followed Nine Dragons for many years, Zay was naturally familiar with the lambda drive system. However, he did not expect that this strange steel lion would have a lambda drive system. However, Zay was wrong. When humans encountered things that they had never come into contact with or could not understand, they would always subconsciously search for similar things in their own memories to explain. This was the natural instinct of humans. However, this became Zait's mistake. What blocked the Phantom's Gatling attack was not the lambda drive system, but the radiation shield technology that Lancelot had used before. It was just a technology that the White Cat had casually obtained after combining many functions with State Zero. Go around left and right. The lambda drive system requires concentration to be used. Zayat made a prompt decision that he thought was the most correct tactical arrangement. On the screen in front of him, it was not difficult to see that their mission target this time, the Whisperer Mira, was actually riding on the strange-looking but unexpectedly powerful steel lion without any protection. As a result, human instinct misled Zayat once again. He believed that the user of the lambda drive system was the Whisperer Mira who was riding on the steel lion. As long as he could create an attack that interfered with Myra's mental state, the lambda drive system would inevitably fail in Myra's mental state without any protection. Hum. The Gatling's roar continued. Zayat's eyes were fixed on the steel lion, watching its every move. Ding ding dang dang. The bullets still futilely created sparks on the radiation shield as they chased after the steel lion. The other two phantoms that were trying to outflank it were also exhausted. Zayat, can you stop the movement of the steel lion? Under the Gatling's shooting, the Lion Zero gave up the plan of attacking the Crimson Phantoms head-on. Instead, it adopted a similar strategy, which made the other two phantoms cry out in pain. Zayat did not reply. This was because he found that the steel lion's speed seemed to be getting faster and faster, and there was no sign of it reaching its limit. If this continued, their attacks would not be able to touch the steel lion's edge. Quick, start moving. You guys go too. Seal it. Zit, who could no longer delay, not only ordered the other two phantoms to attack, but also ordered the soldiers to attack together. In an instant, gunshots were heard. This amazing movement spread throughout the forest and attracted the attention of Xiangliang Sosuke, who had followed the traces of the attack all the way here. It's over there. It's just that this movement can't be made by just a few soldiers. I'm afraid that the S has also appeared. Xiangliang Sosuke clenched the P90 in his hand and quickened his pace. The appearance of the AES had overturned Xiangliang Sosuke's assumption of the enemy's attack scale. Boom! In the midst of the gunshots, an even more ear-piercing explosion swept over. At the same time, an extremely eye-catching black smoke rose into the air, adding a hint of death to the forest that was torn apart by the gunshots. The sound of the AES explosion. Xiangliang Sosuke was shocked and immediately rushed towards the location of the black smoke. The merciless flames spread along the oil trail and gradually engulfed the steel wreckage that was cut into countless pieces. In the flickering flames, the bandits' expression was one of shock and panic. The steel wreckage on the ground was the trump card in the bandits' hearts, the remains of the AES Phantom. The Phantom Shadow, who had been working together to launch an all-out attack, could only lie on the ground silently, being burned by the flames and trampled by the sharp claws. A stream of light poured down, and a pair of dark gray goggles fell in front of Mira in the blink of an eye, covering half of his vision. Sir State Zero. Mira, close your eyes. As soon as State Zero of the Lion finished speaking, a pair of headphones appeared, isolating Myra's hearing from the outside world, leaving only the sound of the movie playing on the goggles. The sharp claws moved slowly, crushing the wreckage of the Phantom. The same style as the goggles worn by Mira, but the size was much larger. The goggles gradually covered the eyes of the Steel Lion, leaving only a trace of slowly flowing cold light overflowing from the back of the goggles. What's wrong? Attack me. The Steel Lion let out a low roar, constantly provoking the humans and the AS that surrounded it. This was the first time the bandits heard the words of State Zero of the Lion so clearly. This was different from the previous exchange with Mira. All the bandits could feel the arrogance in State Zero of the Lion's words, as well as the disdain in his eyes. It was as if the one fighting with them was not a steel toy, but a living person. Alive? How is it possible? Someone must be piloting it. As soon as the words came out, everyone's eyes were focused on the expressionless Mira with the goggles, and they were suddenly dumbfounded. Roar. I'm tired of playing turn-based games. Go to hell. State Zero of the Lion saw that the bandits were no longer attacking, and immediately took the initiative to attack. Buzz, buzz. Suddenly, the Gatling gun's hiss sounded again. In the dense rain of bullets, State Zero of the Lion nimbly dodged the Gatling gun's attack again. So much ammunition. Then, I'll kill you first. State Zero of the Lion's front claws flashed a cold light, turning into lightning, wantonly wandering around in the rain of bullets from the Gatling gun. Then, with a flash of light, the Steel Lion rushed to the top of the Crimson Phantom. Bang! The invincible laser claws slammed down, and the Crimson Phantom was suddenly sent flying. While rolling, the Crimson Phantom of the Gatling gun became the victim of the laser claws, turning into fragments and scattering on the ground. Chapter 370. Gunshots, screams, the heavy footsteps became the sound of Zayat waking up from the endless darkness. The torrential pain continued to tear Zayat's body, telling Zayat a fact. You are not dead yet. Moreover, you are still in a nightmarish hell. The familiar smell of blood, the flames that came into view, the frantically fleeing figure was torn apart by an even bigger, more struggling, and more terrifying behemoth. It stimulated Zayat's consciousness that had just woken up from the coma. The broken armor could no longer block the footsteps that were mixed with the smell of blood and fire. It rushed towards Zayat's nostrils, wantonly attacking Zayat's sense of smell. I remember now, in the moment when his vision, smell, and hearing were attacked by the hell in front of him, Zayat finally recalled the memory before he fainted. It was a cold gaze that even a mercenary with a heart of steel would feel terrified. It was a sharp claw that could tear apart the armor on the Phantom with one hit. There were also those two terrifying swords. Zayat remembered. After his Phantom's Gatling was torn apart by the terrifying Steel Lion, he and his Phantom were in an extremely dangerous situation. On the other side, the bandits and the last Phantom naturally wouldn't just watch as Zayat was forced into a corner by the Steel Lion. They quickly launched support for Zayat, but they did not expect that they would fall into the trap of State Lion Zero. In fact, the laser claws of the Steel Lion could tear the Phantom and the Gatling into pieces. It was just that a certain State Lion Zero forcibly withdrew part of its power, allowing Zayat to survive. However, in the next moment, State of the Lion Zero, which was the first time it was released, also suffered a small but significant backlash because of this. And the result of the backlash was that State Lion Zero lost its mind for a period of time, tearing apart all the enemies in sight. If State Lion Zero did not consciously seal Myra's vision and hearing with goggles and earphones, Mira was afraid that she would have seen the terrifying scene of the Steel Lion tearing apart the bandits that had been chasing them for a long time. The last Phantom Mirage had fallen. The moment it fell, the treatment it suffered was much more miserable than the Phantom that Zayat was piloting. Its limbs were all torn apart. The head monitor was also bitten to pieces by the terrifyingly sharp teeth. The hard chest equipment was mercilessly sliced apart by the long swords on the back of the Steel Lion, setting off a burst of red mist. Apart from that, the bandits who were hiding in all directions wantonly toyed with the Steel Lion that was moving back and forth in the battle zone like a storm. When the screams reached a certain limit, the bullets from a machine gun on the Steel Lion's tail became the gift that ended them, the pitiful bandits. All annihilated. His memories gradually became clearer and combined with the hellish scene before him, allowing Zayd to fully grasp the situation before him. But so what? In a hell that was mixed with sand, broken branches, fallen leaves, steel wreckage, and the extremely dazzling red liquid, the steel monster with cold, murderous eyes slowly turned around and looked at Zayd. The moment he met the Steel Lion's cold gaze, Zayd knew that the reason he was able to survive until now was only because of the steel monster's momentary interest. It left him until the end, and then mercilessly toyed with him to death. This was somewhat similar to the method of the person that Zayd had followed before. However, that person killed whenever he wanted to and did not have so many tricks up his sleeves. Now, this monster's behavior was like a cat catching a mouse that Zayd had seen before. A cat catching a mouse. Most of the time, it was not for food, but to play and train its capturing skills. Zayd slowly raised his gaze, sitting in the cockpit that had been torn apart and had lost all protection. He struggled to pull out his right hand, opened the storage compartment beside him, and slowly picked up the pistol placed inside. He shook it and aimed at the Steel Lion that was slowly walking towards him, stepping on blood and fire. "Monster, I'm not a mouse," Zayd murmured and fired without hesitation. Bang! The bullet whistled out, but it was once again bounced back by the invisible wall. Buzz! The futile bullet was bounced back and hit the Phantom's body, and it let out an unwilling howl. "Monster, what are you?" A slippery touch appeared on his forehead. Soon, it dyed Zayd's right vision red. In that red vision, the figure of the Steel Lion was struggling so fiercely and terrifyingly. Zayd muttered a few words weakly, used all his strength, and kept pulling the trigger. One shot. Another shot was fired at the Steel Lion. Even though Zayd knew that these attacks could not break through the monster's wall, Zayd still did it. Moreover, the moment the last bullet was about to be fired, Zayd suddenly stood up from the torn cockpit, opened his eyes wide, and stared at the Steel Lion that had already walked in front of him, looking at him coldly. "Die, monster!" With an unwilling roar, Zayd pulled the trigger of the last bullet. Bang! The moment the gunshot rang out and the bullet left the barrel, Zayd suddenly felt as though a gust of wind had blown past his ears. Ding! In the next second, the sound of a stray bullet hitting a metal object reached Zayd's ears. "Ha ha ha ha!" When the pistol fell from Zayat's hand, it was as if all the strength had been sucked out of Zayat's body, and he completely collapsed. "Come on, monster, give me a good time," Zayat muttered weakly, and the vision in his eyes was gradually fading. As long as he waited for a moment, this man who was defeated by 9 dragons, and after most of his comrades were killed by 9 dragons, who had followed him in and out of the battlefield for many years, would definitely be taken away by the Grim Reaper, to the hell he should go to. However, at this moment, a burst of hurried footsteps entered the battlefield. This Xiangliang Zongjia, who had rushed over with all his might, entered the battlefield and was immediately stunned. The ground was occupied by bright red blood and burning flames. The expression of death filled with fear and pain, and the scattered steel wreckage that was engulfed by flames. And that huge steel beast that Xiangliang Zongjia had never seen before. These were all attacking Xiangliang Zongjia's worldview, especially when Xiangliang Zongjia saw the thin figure sitting behind the huge steel beast's neck. He immediately remembered the purpose of his chase. "Mila, are you okay?" Even though Xiangliang Zongjia had never seen this huge steel beast before, nor had he heard of any country in the world that could develop such a strange existence, he forcefully calmed his mind and tried to ask the figure sitting behind the steel lion's neck. "Roar!" Unexpectedly, Xiangliang Zongjia's question attracted the steel beast's attention. A terrifying roar once again swept through the sky above the forest. The aura of death in the roar, as well as the crazy power, caused Xiangliang Zongjia to instantly tense up. He knew, if this steel beast attacked, even if it held a weapon that could allow Xiangliang Zongjia to charge a few rounds on the battlefield, Xiangliang Zongjia knew that he was as powerless as a baby in front of this steel beast. Fortunately, the steel lion only roared angrily before stopping all its movements, as if it was trying its best to stay awake. Roar! Suddenly, there was another roar. However, this time, Xiangliang Zongjia relaxed his body slightly, because from this roar, Xiangliang Zongjia heard a hint of waking up. Crack! The steel lion's goggles slid down, and it turned into a ray of light and disappeared in midair. "Kid, come here." In an instant, Xiangliang Zongjia's slightly relaxed body tensed up again. It spoke. The steel lion can actually speak. Xiangliang Zongjia subconsciously looked around and found no one else. And the voice that suddenly sounded was not Mila's. Surprised, Xiangliang Zongjia looked at the steel lion that was also looking at him. "Kid, if you don't move fast, that person will die." The steel lion's huge head moved slightly, indicating Xiangliang Zongjia to move faster. Xiangliang Zongjia, who was puzzled about the steel lion's existence, after confirming that Mila was fine, subconsciously climbed onto the wreckage of the Crimson Phantom and stretched his head to look at the broken cockpit. Little did he know that when Xiangliang Zonjia's face appeared above the cockpit, the dying Zit slightly opened his eyes that were half occupied by darkness. Yo, Zayat muttered weakly, This face, is it Kasem? So, it turns out that I have already arrived at hell." Before Xiangliang Zongjia could finish his words, Zayat's head tilted and he lost consciousness. "Kid, hurry up and save him." State Lion Zero suddenly roared in a low voice. "You!" Xiangliang Zongjia was stunned. The name Kasem, except for Kalinin, probably no one else knew about it. If there was anyone, it would be 9 dragons and his dead comrades. "Zayat, is it?" After skillfully injecting the first aid medicine on Zayat, Xiangliang Zongjia turned his head and looked at the huge steel lion. He knew that this was supposed to be a battle of total annihilation, but Zayat was left alone, which was very unusual. Xiangliang Sosuke didn't think that his face would make this mysterious steel lion that could speak human language hold back in advance. "What are you looking at? Kid, why aren't you calling your teammates over? Also inform that is Knight. His sister Mila is fine." State Lion Zero glanced at Zayat, who was spared, but did not know if he could survive. "Kid, tell this guy, this time I won't kill him. Next time, if he makes a move on Mila, I will kill him. If he doesn't die." The reason why State Lion Zero held back was not hard to guess. Zate's previous performance made State of Lion Zero think of his original world, where he fought side by side with his comrades against the apocalypse. This, maybe State Lion Zero, was just being soft-hearted. Tisk, seems like I have to be careful the next time I release my instincts. Xiangliang Sosuke, who didn't know what was going on, opened his mouth and tried to stop the steel lion from leaving. However, he didn't say anything. After all, State Lion Zero's actions blocked all the questions in Xiangliang Zongjia's heart, and he could not get a chance to release them. Fortunately, Xiangliang Zongjia knew who to look for to explain everything in front of him, as well as the steel lion of unknown origin. At this point, Amalgam's attack on Mila was declared a failure due to the interference of the White Cat State Zero. Because of this failure, there was a dispute within the Amalgam. This was an online conference held by many of the Amalgam's leaders. Other than Mr. AU, who controlled most of the Amalgam's cadres through various means, there were 3 other Amalgam leaders who had secretly become March AU. They were Mr. CU, Mr. SN, and Mr. NA. Of course, before the conference was about to start, another Amalgam leader, Mr. AG, Leonard Testarossa, arrived late. Mr. AG, you're late. Before Leonard could speak, Mr. AU took the lead. Facing the attack from the biggest enemy within the Amalgam, Leonard just smiled and said loudly, "Sorry, there was a small accident, so I had to put in some effort to deal with it." Here, I would like to apologize to everyone. Leonard's posture was very humble, and there was even a faint feeling that he would admit defeat as long as he drew a line. However, even with Leonard's attitude, Mr. AG, who took the lead in the attack, did not dare to force Leonard too much. As a result, this small revolt ultimately came to nothing. After a moment of silence, Mr. AU spoke again. "Everyone, by now, you must know that there's an armed force in the world set up against us Amalgam, Mithril." As soon as these words came out, the other Amalgam leaders, except for Leonard, nodded in agreement. Mr. O glanced at Reynolds' profile picture without a trace and continued, "Mr. O, a few days ago, I planned an ambush, trying to attract Mithril and try to find out the power of Mithril. As a result, I found that the power of Mithril was far beyond our expectations." Mr. AU paused and continued to say a name that was already very familiar to the Amalgam. Lambda Drive System. Among the Mithril AS pilots, there are already people who can skillfully use the Lambda Drive System. If this continues, the existence of our Amalgam will inevitably be threatened. At this point, Mr. O turned his attention to Reynolds, who had been silent all this while. "Mr. AG, I heard that you sent a team to retrieve the Whispers rescued by Mithril, right?" Leonard nodded slightly and said calmly, "Yes, but the operation has failed. This is also the reason why I'm late. Everyone, as Mr. AU said, the existence of Mithril has threatened the existence of our Amalgam. For this reason, as long as this armed force that threatens our Amalgam can be eliminated, I am willing to provide the power at my disposal to clear the obstacles for the organization." Unafraid of the flames on his body, Leonard gently threw the burning torch back to Mr. AU. By the way, Leonard also added a piece of information. "Right? Mithril relies on the whereabouts of TDD-1. I heard that Mr. AU has already taken control of it. Therefore, I can guarantee that I can provide a suicide squad composed of 50 mini AS Avengers to add strength to the operation against TDD-1. I don't know what Mr. AU and other sirs think of my arrangement." Chapter 371. The darkness that shrouded the ocean was finally gone, and the sun that was slowly revealing its outline from the horizon dyed the black sky with a whitish-white color. The salty sea breeze blew Kalinen's braids, making the white-haired veteran with slightly weathered eyes look elegant at this moment. "Major, our luck has been very good recently, isn't it?" Richard stood next to Kalinen and watched the sun slowly rise from the horizon with him. "Uh-huh, it is indeed so. I didn't expect the enemy we are facing to be so mysterious and powerful." Kalinen nodded slowly, then sighed slightly. Maybe this is the original intention of the combat headquarters. The intention of letting Knight join the Sons of Dan's slave. Richard nodded slightly, and there was a hint of agreement in his tone. Maybe so. In the short time that Knight joined us, we have learned a lot about a 21, no, it should be called Amalgam now. We have made a lot of progress in understanding this mysterious and powerful organization. Speaking of this, Richard smiled slightly and sighed from the bottom of his heart. I didn't expect the founder of Mithril to have such a powerful spirit. He created Mithril and used this behemoth that has been hiding in the dark side of the world for decades as an opponent. This kind of spirit is indeed rare in the world. Indeed, but our courage is not bad either, isn't it? The corner of Kalinen's mouth curved up slightly. As the progress of the intelligence on Amalgam was gradually spread out, the full picture of this mysterious and powerful organization was gradually revealed in front of everyone's eyes. In addition to being shocked by the strength of Amalgam, the idea that emerged in the minds of Kalinen, Richard, and the other Mithril commanders was not to retreat, but to ignite a fighting spirit. Yes, I don't know about the other teams, but the morale of the Sons of Dan Slave has always been maintained at the highest level. Hearing this, Kalinen suddenly laughed out loud. That is all thanks to the goddess of wisdom of the Sons of Dan Slave. Although this was the truth, Richard couldn't help but want to refute Kalinen's name. But before Richard could speak, the sound of propellers stirring the air came from the horizon, and in a short period of time, a gust of wind blew over Richard and Kalinen's heads. I'm back. A meaningful light flashed in Kalinen's eyes. In the helicopter that slowly landed on the deck of the son of Dan Nu, Sagara Sosuke, who had returned for some reason, as well as the enemy who urgently needed to use the medical equipment on the son of Dan Nu, the enemy named Zayat. Jia Linen had a deep affinity with Xiangliang Soji, and had spent a long time with him, so he naturally knew what the name Zayat meant to Xiangliang Soji. Voila! As the door of the helicopter opened, the medical team that had been waiting by the side immediately stepped forward and carefully transferred Zaid, who was fixed on a stretcher and only hanging on by a breath of life support system, to the deck. The doctor skillfully and quickly performed a temporary examination on Zaid, before nodding towards Xiangliang Zongjia, who was walking down from the cabin, indicating that Zaid should be taken away. Xiangliang Zongjia had no objections to this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to bring Zayt back. After seeing Zayt off the deck with the medical team, Sosuke Sagamiya turned around and saluted Kalinen and Richard. Thank you, Major Kalinen, Lieutenant Colonel Richard. This was to thank the two commanders for allowing Zayt to board the son of Dan Nu. Cough. This wasn't our decision. It was Sir Captain's idea. Sergeant Xiangliang Zongjia, if you want to express your gratitude, it's best if you express your gratitude to Sir Captain in person. Although Richard didn't like Sosuke Xiangliang's incomprehensible style, he still reminded him out of kindness who he should express his gratitude to. Yes, that's for sure. But where's Sir Captain now? Kalinen replied. Sir Captain is currently conducting an interrogation with the knight. Interrogation? Sir Captain is actually needed? Xiangliang Zongjia was stunned and couldn't believe his ears. As the son of Dan Nu gathered the most elite forces of Mithril, Captain Teresa was actually needed to personally interrogate him. Xiangliang Zongjia couldn't understand these words. Cough. Sergeant Xiangliang Zongjia, you can go down first. I heard you met with some mishaps in this battle. I hope to see your report on the captain's desk in 12 hours. Richard didn't have any intention to dwell on this matter, and found a reason to send Xiangliang Zongjia away. Major, don't you think we've gambled too much this time? When only Richard and Kalinen were left on the deck, Richard sighed inwardly. When facing Kalinen, who was about the same age as him, Richard would display a slightly different attitude compared to when facing the other crew members. Kalinen was silent for a moment. In his mind, he recalled the daring plan that Teresa and Lei Minkai had come up with. Indeed, it's very risky. However, if everything goes well, we might be able to reap a bountiful harvest. I hope so. At the same time, In a room of the son of Dan Nu, a table lamp that could only illuminate a small area shone on the face of a middle-aged man. The intense light caused the middle-aged man to subconsciously close his eyes. At the same time, he shouted in panic, Hey, who the hell are you people? Didn't I say it before? I'm just an ordinary car manufacturer. I didn't commit any crime. Why are you imprisoning me? I want to find my lawyer." Under the light, the middle-aged man clenched his fists tightly with his eyes closed, shouting and repeating the same words at least 20 times. On the other side of the room, behind the wall made of one-way transparent glass, Teresa and Ray Minkai were standing there, watching the middle-aged man's performance under the light. Still not willing to let go, this kind of dialogue can almost be used as a script. Teresa's hands unconsciously moved across the paper that covered the table. That was the identity of the middle-aged man when he was sent to the son of Dan Nu. At first, Teresa didn't know, but after sorting out the results of the first round of interrogation, Teresa found that in a short day, the middle-aged man had repeatedly refuted his previous statements, causing serious contradictions to appear in all the information obtained from him. To put it simply, Teresa had spent an entire day interrogating him, and it was all in vain. That's inevitable. Captain, compared to Teresa, who was a little depressed, Lei Minkai was much calmer. If this car manufacturer who claimed to be Qian Shanwu was so easy to deal with, Mr. Au wouldn't have let him be his substitute. Moreover, judging from Qian Shanwu's current behavior, this guy must be stalling for time. When this thought just appeared in Ray Minkai's mind, Teresa, who was a little demoralized, suddenly thought of the same answer. Knight, this person wants to stall for time. I'm afraid so. Ray Minkai nodded and said a possibility. Although we have carefully checked Qian Shanwu when we boarded the son of Dan Nu, we can't rule out the possibility that there is a signal transmitter hidden in a corner of that body that we haven't found yet. Teresa raised her right hand, carefully pinched her braid, and muttered, "You're right." Assuming that Qian Shanwu was deliberately arranged by someone in the amalgam to pretend to be captured so that he could sneak into the Dan slave's son, then this person must have a signal transmitter that can fool the Mithril's technology. Thinking of this, Teresa smiled slightly. Great. We were also worried about how to stall for time quietly. Originally, according to Teresa's plan, after receiving Qian Shanwu, they would immediately turn off all the signal channels of the son of Dan Nu, enter a deep-sea stealth state, and follow a hidden path back to Merritt Island. Yes, indeed. In this way, we don't have to worry about hiding our actions. Captain, is everything ready? Ray Minkai nodded. Since the other party also had the idea of stalling for time, Ray Minkai also pushed the boat with the current and helped Qian Shanwu and the amalgam force behind him with their wishful thinking. Everything is ready. It's just that after this time, the son of Dan Nu will probably be hurt. Thinking of the son of Dan Nu, who was about to turn 1 year old, Teresa couldn't help but sigh. But no matter how new the warship was, it was still built to participate in the battle and survive in the fierce battle. This was the fate of the warship. It was also the fate that the son of Dan Nu was about to face. As long as we win, the son of Dan Nu can still gallop on the ocean. Ray Minkai knew what Teresa was thinking and couldn't help but comfort her. Thank you, Knight. I feel much better. The son of Dan Nu will always welcome the baptism of battle. In the previous exercises, although we won consecutively, it was because the opponents were too weak. So, now is the time to test the strength of the son of Dan Nu. Yes, Captain, Qian Shanwu's matter was put aside like this. Since he was trying to stall for time, Teresa didn't hesitate to isolate him, allowing him to talk to himself in the small room. After ending this meaningless interrogation, Ray Minkai separated from Teresa and went to the infirmary. Here, there was already a patient who had miraculously returned from the brink of death and was waiting for Ray Minkai's arrival. Swish! The curtains that weren't too thick were pulled up and blocked the small single bed. After Ray Minkai fixed the curtains, he turned around and sat on the stool beside the bed. He raised his head and looked at the pale, beautiful girl with long hair who was leaning on the bed. Xia Yufang. In a sudden war, she lost her parents and other relatives. She and her sister, Xia Yulan, were wandering about and were about to die of hunger. She was adopted by the Nine Dragons. Since then, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan became the most loyal hunting dogs of the Nine Dragons. They hunted all the targets that could be hunted. Sitting on the stool, Ray Minkai calmly looked at the face that looked delicate, but was actually a cold killer's face. Ray Minkai took the initiative to expose Xia Yufang's identity, which made Xia Yufang, who had been silent since she woke up, have a slight reaction. However, this slight reaction was only for a moment and was covered up by Xia Yufang. If it wasn't for the heartbeat monitor that was still jumping, Ray Minkai almost thought that the girl in front of him had become a beautiful doll. After many failed attempts, Ray Minkai finally took out his trump card. I killed the 9 dragons. As soon as these words came out, Xia Yufang's deadwater-like face suddenly became wonderful, especially that pair of dead eyes, which were staring at Ray Minkai, as if in the next second, this beautiful, seriously injured girl would explode on the spot and attack Ray Minkai. However, in the next moment, the hatred and anger on Xia Yufang's face abruptly subsided, allowing her beautiful face to once again become as still as water. Her pair of eyes that were about to spit out flames instantly turned back into a deathly stillness, her pupils without the slightest trace of life. Such a strong emotional control made Ray Minkai couldn't help but sigh. Although the 9 dragons used cruel educational methods on the twins when they were young, it was undeniable that the 9 dragons was indeed the savior that appeared in front of the twins at the moment when they were about to starve to death. Sometimes demons, sometimes fathers, these complicated emotions, the experience that couldn't be understood, it created the complicated karma between the 9 dragons and the twins that was difficult to explain with words. Ray Minkai quietly looked at Xia Yufang's face that had once again returned to dead silence, and slowly asked again. In a battle not long ago, the 9 dragons appeared. Without waiting for Xia Yufang to respond to this sentence, Ray Minkai continued. But the 9 dragons are already dead. I used a pistol and personally shot a full magazine of bullets into the 9 dragons' body, shattering its internal organs, and watched the 9 dragons take its last breath with my own eyes. Therefore, I can guarantee that the 9 dragons are indeed dead. When Ray Minkai was talking about how he killed the 9 dragons, Xia Yufang's dead silent face fluctuated again, and it became more and more intense. In the face of such a situation, Ray Minkai's voice didn't change at all, as if he was talking about a very normal thing. I don't want to get any information from your mouth. What I want to know is who took the 9 dragons' body away. As soon as he finished speaking, Xia Yufang's expression suddenly froze. After a long while, Xia Yufang raised her head stiffly and stared at Ray Minkai. She said a name with a voice full of hatred. Mr. J. Mr. J. The appearance of this name could already prove a lot of things. In other words, Ray Minkai's goal today had been completed. However, before leaving, Ray Minkai told Xia Yufang a piece of information. That's right. Your sister Xia Yulan isn't dead. She was saved by a clown named Mr. J. Chapter 372. The sky of the ocean was changeable. In the age of great navigation, the unpredictable ocean swallowed the lives of countless navigators. Even in the era where humans could use satellites to observe the weather changes in the ocean, the weather changes in the depths of the ocean were still terrifying to many navigators. Captain, distress signal detected. The son of Dan's slave, who was in stealth mode, suddenly received an emergency distress signal from 300 nautical miles to the east. After Richard raised his hand to signal CIC to pause the report, he looked at Teresa, who was sitting in the captain's seat. Captain, please advise. The appearance of this distress signal was quite thought-provoking. In fact, 72 hours before the storm, the countries around this area had issued an emergency notice, informing all civilian ships in this area to return to the port for shelter or to leave the area where the storm was generated. Therefore, the pill slave's son, who was submerged in this extremely turbulent region of the sea, also received an unusual distress signal in this situation. "I'm afraid this is a guest." Teresa pondered for a moment and thought of a possibility. "It's very possible." Richard nodded. "So, are Knight and the others ready?" Teresa's small movements appeared as usual. Her slender fingers gently pinched her braids, and Teresa lowered her eyes slightly, thinking about the battle plan previously set and carefully looking for possible loopholes. "It's ready. It's just that there are some small problems on Qian Shanwu's side." As the deputy captain, Richard was very familiar with the situation on the ship, but he was a little troubled by Qian Shanwu and the other captives. "Is there a problem, Richard?" Teresa loosened her braid and turned to look at Richard. "Richard? No, Captain. There are no problems." After Richard opened his mouth, he dismissed the idea of talking about Zate and Xia Yufang. After all, on this son of Dan's slave, Zate and Xia Yufang were both captives. In particular, one was seriously injured and in a coma. Although the other woke up, she lacked the spirit of cooperation and had been in a state of stubborn resistance. Richard felt that moving them to a remote cabin was the best he could do. "Is that so? Then let's begin. I hope that's not our guest." Lightning bolts flashed across the pitch-black sky, raising waves that were tens of meters high. The gale that was constantly strengthening continued to attack the ship that was sailing on the Berserk Sea. The closer one got to the center of the storm, the more terrifying the impact of the storm would be. Standing in the middle of the bridge, the captain of a ship was looking at the terrifying storm outside the porthole with a solemn expression. Normally, this captain with decades of sailing experience would never enter such a storm. However, there was always a time when things didn't go as one wished. In the face of a gun pointed at his loved one, the captain finally chose to give in and brought his beloved ship into the terrifying storm. "First mate, are those people ready?" The captain did not know the origins of the bandits who had kidnapped his family. He only knew that before they set sail, the bandits had moved a large number of containers that seemed to contain a lot of space onto his ship. "We've already started." "Captain, are we just going to watch?" The first mate, who had been the captain's partner for a long time, knew the captain's temperament very well. In his early years, even in the face of pirates, the captain had never shown such a cowardly performance. Thinking of his family being pointed at by a gun, no matter how hot-blooded the captain was in his heart, it eventually turned into a helpless sigh. "Sigh, let them be. I only hope that after this incident, my family can survive." Obviously, the captain no longer had any illusions about whether he could survive after this incident. His only hope was that his family could escape from the bandits. "I hope so." The first mate glanced at the sighing captain and said silently, "His family, and even the chief engineer's family, were kidnapped by the bandits, just like the captain's family." In the cabin, a young man sat next to the sonar equipment attentively, carefully distinguishing the movements under the Berserk Sea. However, due to the storm, the noise echoing in the ocean almost filled the young man's ears, forcing him to divert more of his energy to eliminate the meaningless noise that interfered with his ability to distinguish the noise. "Is it still not done?" Sitting next to the container, a dark-skinned man with an extremely impatient expression frowned and shouted. In this storm, even if they were on a 10,000-ton ship, they still felt the discomfort of being tossed up and down and shaking back and forth. This made everyone involved in this mission uncomfortable. "Wait a little longer." The young man raised his right hand and carefully adjusted the intensity of the sonar. Looking at his expression, he seemed to have found a clue. "Attention, there seems to be a problem." The young man's actions were already seen by everyone. As soon as he sent out a signal, everyone picked up their equipment and waited for the young man's final confirmation. Close. It should be it. TDD-1, it's here. It's about 10 kilometers west of this ship." After the final confirmation, the atmosphere in the entire cabin suddenly became solemn and serious. Everyone was waiting for the last order. "Position locked. Begin the operation." A burly man walked to the sonar equipment from his side. After confirming with the young man, he turned around and shouted the order to attack. Then, The moment the cabin opened and the bone-piercing cold wind and the violent rainstorm outside, everyone who had already been dressed neatly immediately jumped out of the cabin door in an orderly manner. Without any fear, they jumped into the ocean with layers of huge waves with the underwater propulsion device. After watching his subordinates jump into the raging sea, the burly man turned around and looked at the thin and small figure who had been sitting silently on the side of a container from the beginning to the end. He knew this thin and small figure was the trump card of this mission. If they couldn't snatch the target TDD-1 in a short period of time, then this seemingly weak girl, who was actually a terrifying killer, would be the trump card to solve the final problem. Xia Yulan, before the signal is sent out, you wait first. The burly man's voice made the girl, who had been silent and even whose eyes had lost their luster, raise her head slightly. After glancing at the burly man, she nodded slightly as a response. The burly man was not surprised by this. In the amalgam, there were all kinds of strange people. Even monsters appeared in groups. Monsters, even if they die, they will still transform into demons and wreak havoc in the world. Before putting on his equipment and preparing to jump into the raging sea and meet up with his subordinates, the burly man couldn't help but turn his head to look at the container behind the girl. His eyes were filled with a terrifying light, as if he saw the return of the demon. The raging waves rolled. In the face of such a terrifying force of nature, humans were undoubtedly weak. Even with the help of many pieces of equipment, the moment they jumped into the raging waves, they were already swallowed and fell into the deep sea. However, this was also what the burly man and the others hoped for. Just as the sonar was disturbed by the noise before, their stealth would also be under the cover of the noise until they found the son of the dance slave. The loyal underwater electronic instruments that were not affected by the storm constantly updated the distance between them and the son of the dance slave, correcting the deviation of the route under the impact of the current over and over again. Close, in the dim seabed in the distance, an even deeper shadow seemed to appear. Close, we have reached the distance where we can start the operation. Captain, the moment the screen locked onto the ship that sent out the distress signal, Teresa stood up, raised her right hand, and said in a sweet voice, "Let's start the operation." "Yes, Captain." The alarm instantly rang out among the son of the dance slave. Everyone who was ready immediately began to move. "Let's start the operation." "Yours too, are you ready?" The moment the alarm sounded, Ray Minkai had been waiting in the crossbow's cockpit for a long time. "This is yours too. Stand by at any time." "Night. There's a force 10 gale outside. We're not going to just stand there and fight with the enemy, right?" Melissa skillfully activated her landline while sighing at the force of nature they were about to face. "Hey, it's just a force 10 gale. What's there to be afraid of?" When Cruz heard Melissa's sigh, he immediately expressed that he didn't care about this small gale. The wind level was corrected half a minute ago. Yours 6. Now the wind on the sea has reached force 11 and may rise to force 12 at any time. Xiangliang Sosuke bluntly exposed Cruz's bragging. "Force 12? Are you kidding me? In that case, don't even talk about shooting. I'm afraid even an M9 can't stand up." Cruz exclaimed in surprise. "Don't worry. Because of this, the enemy can easily dispatch an AS. Other than the AS equipped with a lambda drive system, I'm afraid no other body can withstand the storm in such harsh natural conditions." Lei Mingkai explained the climatic conditions that they were about to encounter before adding, "That's right. In addition, when the battle plan reaches the second stage, the son of the dance slave will perform a confusion maneuver, pretending to have no choice but to choose to surface because of a sneak attack and leave this stormy sea area. This way, the M9 will also come in handy." When Cruz heard this, he couldn't help but whistle. "It sounds very interesting. How many AS will the enemy appear?" "It's impossible to estimate, but the only thing that's certain is that the enemy will inevitably appear with the lambda drive system. When the time comes, leave it to me and Crossbow to deal with. The rest is up to you." "Yours 2, understood." "Yours 6, understood." "Yours 7, understood." Boom! Suddenly, The sound of something hitting something passed through the steel shell of the son of the Dan slave and echoed in Neku. The guests had arrived. Boom, boom. The sound that sounded like someone was knocking on the door made everyone who had entered their predetermined positions instantly focus their attention. Boom. An even more intense explosion spread throughout the son of the Dan slave. Report. The power system has malfunctioned. Now the son of the Dan slave has lost 1/5 of its power. If this continues, the loss will increase. When a warning of power loss sounded on the bridge, Teresa's eyes flashed. Well done. It seems that our son of the Dan slave has been exposed. At least the power system is no longer secret. When Teresa heard that the power system of the son of the Dan slave was damaged, she immediately thought of a possibility. It was easy to destroy the power system of the son of the Dan slave. But when destroying the power system of the son of the Dan slave, it was impossible to strictly control the scope of the damage without the relevant information of the son of the Dan slave. And the appearance of this situation also confirmed a fact. Amalgam, this mysterious organization, was indeed very powerful, so powerful that there might even be an amalgam spy in Mithril. Was it Ray Minkai? Teresa immediately rejected this possibility. This was because Teresa already had a very bad premonition when she flipped through the past reports. This spy from the amalgam was probably already lurking in Mithril from the beginning, and he was in a very important position. But as for who it was, Teresa didn't have much clue at the moment. Especially in front of her, Teresa had to complete this trick of fishing willing people to take the bait before she could free up her hands to deal with other things. Richard, inform Major Kalinin. Begin. Yes. Inform Major Kalinin. The plan begins. In addition, inform the ship to prepare for a defensive impact. Son of the Dan slave, emergency surface. Under the order, the entire son of the Dan slave submerged in the deep sea suddenly trembled violently. This was a sign of the intensity caused by the emergency surface. Everyone in the predetermined position tightly grabbed the handles around them to stabilize their bodies. The people sitting in the AS were much luckier. This was because the lock on their AS hadn't been opened yet. 3, 2, 1, surface. Crash. The huge son of the Dan slave rushed straight up from the bottom of the sea, broke through the raging waves, and then directly slammed into the huge waves, setting off even more huge waves. Terrifying lightning flashed across the sky, and deafening thunder exploded. The wind whistled and set off layers of huge waves, trying to drown the son of the Dan slave under the sea again. Boom! An explosion sounded, and the cold wind filled with torrential rain poured directly into the warm cabin through the exploded hatch of the son of the Dan slave, making the Mithril soldiers not far behind the hatch shutter. Everyone listened to the order. The operation begins. Before the guests arrive at the guest room, take it easy. Don't scare the guests away. Kalinin, who was guarding the command room, immediately issued an order and sent a request to Teresa the moment the hatch was blown open. Sir Colonel, please let Knight and the Yours team get ready. Understood. Teresa nodded. Knight, I'll leave the attack time of the AS to you. Is there a problem? No, Captain. Chapter 373. Kacha. Above the dark clouds that shrouded the entire sea, bolts of lightning swam among them, wantonly announcing their existence and spreading the light of that moment over the sea. Da-da-da! Bursts of intense gunfire came from the deep passage. This was the sound of the intruders entering the passage leading to the interior of the son of Dan slave. In this regard, Ray Minkai didn't feel anything, because he knew that this was not his duty right now. According to Kalinin's order, all the personnel involved in the interception did not bring out 100% of their combat power. Instead, they retreated while fighting, trying their best to lure the intruders to the area where the plan was carried out. Although the commotion coming from the passage was quite intense, Lei Minkai was not worried at all that his plan would fail. In Teresa and Ray Minkai's deduction, the only thing that could change the entire plan was the AS that had not appeared so far. After all, as a submarine built with the most advanced technology, it would not be snatched by an intruder team of less than 100 people. Time passed by minute. The movement in the passage seemed to have moved to a deeper area of the sun of Dan's slave. Only the trace of echo was captured by the sensor and fed back to the screen in front of Ray Minkai. Night, it's time. At this time, Melissa's voice came. Ray Minkai's eyes turned and saw the moment the countdown at the bottom left of the screen in front of him completely reached 0. Gotcha! Boom! The sound of a fixed mechanism unlocking came, and the dome above Ray Minkai, Melissa, and the others slowly opened, revealing the deck where the crossbow and 2 M9s were parked. Then, the moment the violent storm rushed to the deck through the gap in the dome, 3 signal flares stared at the violent storm and rushed into the heavy black clouds in the sky. In the darkness dominated by storms and giant waves, these 3 signal flares were particularly conspicuous. Captain, the signal flares have appeared. On the other side of the turbulent sea, the people on the ship immediately saw the 3 signal flares rising into the air. After subconsciously picking up the binoculars to confirm for a while, the captain slowly sighed. I hope this is the signal for the end. Inform those people that their vanguard has succeeded. However, this was only the second part of the plan set up by Ray Minkai and Teresa to lure the enemy. When the intruders were lured into the first area, the son of Dan's slave immediately launched the signal flares used by ocean-going ships when they were in distress. This was a bait, because there were no other ships entered in this area except for the son of Dan's slave and the ship used by the intruders. It was self-evident who these 3 signal flares were aimed at. As the signal flare fell from the sky, a loud noise came from the wind-filled cabin of the ship. The crew members who stood in the bridge and stabilized their bodies as the ship was swayed by the huge waves subconsciously looked over. Bang! A loud noise tore through the howling wind, and a ball of fire exploded in the cabin. Boom! In the explosion of the fire, a crimson figure tore the fire from the inside out. Then, under the gaze of the captain and many crew members, fearless of the lightning splitting from the sky, the figure quickly fell from the ship and plunged into the towering waves. That's Az, that crimson figure, that braid that danced wildly in the wind. With a single glance, the captain recognized the figure that jumped high from the cabin, fearless of the storm, and plummeted straight to the surface of the sea. The next second, to the captain's surprise, the moment the fireball dissipated, the bandits who kidnapped the ship pushed out rectangular iron boxes nearly 10 meters long from the cabin, roughly in the direction of the signal flare. Then, a burst of sparks rushed out of the boxes, and objects that shocked the captain appeared one after another. Torpedo? If the appearance of AS surprised the captain, then the appearance of the torpedo let the captain catch a glimpse of the bandits' intention. This was a ship that the captain didn't know about, the intention of sinking the ship that had just sent out the distress signal flare. This is a crime. The captain moved his lips and finally chose to remain silent. Wasn't it a crime for the bandits to kidnap his family? I hope this storm can give him some good luck. In the end, the captain who chose to remain silent prayed helplessly. Under such extreme weather conditions, the complicated sea conditions were not suitable for the use of torpedoes at all. But these bandits still launched torpedoes regardless of such conditions, which meant that the bandits had a certain degree of certainty that they could use these torpedoes to achieve their goal. Gotcha! Crackle. Above the sky, the lightning that wandered above the black clouds sometimes streaked across the sky, sometimes fell from the clouds, splitting the towering waves into water curtains. The deafening roar continued to impact the sound capture sensor of AS, making Cruz, who was concentrating on observing the surrounding situation, couldn't help but turn off the sensor. Damn it! Will there be a madman driving AS in this damn weather? Focus. Pay attention to the status of the fixed cable. Melissa scolded Kurlutz, then looked at Saglia Sosuke, who was guarding in another direction. After confirming his situation, She looked at the crossbow that was proudly standing in the middle of the storm without relying on the fixed rope. At this moment, the body of the crossbow flickered with a faintly discernible light. It was actually able to isolate the whistling wind and torrential rain outside. It was not affected at all. Yours too? Pay attention to the surrounding situation. The situation is not right. Focusing, Ray Minkai, who activated the lambda drive system, faintly felt that in the turbulent waves around the son of Dan Slave, there seemed to be something rushing toward the son of Dan Slave. Understood. Yours 6, yours 7. Focus. Pay attention to the surrounding situation. What Melissa didn't expect was that before she finished speaking, Cruz's M9 took the lead and fired the first shot. Bang! The sound wave set off by the 76mm sniper rifle's bullet dispersed the surrounding rain curtain. The next moment, a huge splash suddenly exploded high up. That's... Melissa was stunned. Suddenly, she quivered and looked at the huge wave that had just been set off on the other side. A white line of water appeared under the huge wave. Torpedo! How is this possible? In this kind of sea situation, there's actually someone using a torpedo. How is this possible? Bang! Cruz didn't hesitate. He aimed and fired in one breath. After accurately hitting the second torpedo, he revealed a proud smile. I'm really a genius. I didn't expect to blow up the torpedo in this kind of extreme sea situation. Year 6, 3 o'clock, new torpedo. My M9's shotgun can't hit the target. It's up to you. On the other side, Sagaya Sosuke also discovered the torpedo hidden under the huge wave. Understood. Sister Mal, pay attention. This is my Cruz's special performance. The unexpected torpedo also gave Cruz an unexpected special performance. While Cruz was sniping at the torpedo that appeared under the huge wave, Ray Minkai was also observing the surrounding situation. However, the giant waves, each higher than the last, blocked Ray Minkai's line of sight from beginning to end, making it impossible for him to directly observe the surrounding situation. Al, can the radar be used? Due to environmental factors, it can't be used at full power. Al's answer could be said to be expected. Yours too. Did you find anything on your side? No. How do these torpedoes appear? Even if the enemy's ship is hidden nearby, it's impossible for a torpedo to appear around the son of Dan Slave in this kind of sea situation. Boom! When Ray Minkai and Melissa were exchanging information, another torpedo was blown up by Cruz. However, as the torpedo splashed down, Ray Minkai keenly captured a trace of abnormality. Al, zoom in on the water over there. Understood. As the image zoomed in, a few pieces of clothes appeared in the wreckage left by the torpedo explosion, rising and falling with the water. No, this is not a torpedo we know. Yours 2, yours 6, yours 7. Pay attention to the situation around the son of Dan Slave. No, it should be said that among these torpedoes, many of them are not torpedoes that we know of. Instead, they have a torpedo shell, and something is hidden inside them. What? Ray Minkai's words caused Melissa and the other two to exclaim in unison. Among them, Xiangyang Sasuke and Cruz, who reacted quickly, immediately searched the water floating not far in front of them. In the end, it was exactly the same as what Lei Minkai had discovered. Unknowingly, at the location where the torpedoes were blown up, there were some clothes silently rising and falling with the waves. Could it be a human? Melissa thought of a possibility. No, it's not a human, or it's just some robots. Yours 6, as long as a torpedo appears, blow it up immediately. If it comes into contact with the son of Dan Slave, it's fine if it explodes, but I'm afraid that the thing hidden inside will run out and break into the son of Dan Slave. I'm afraid it will be a disaster. Ray Minkai had vaguely discovered the truth behind these torpedoes. Perhaps what was hidden in these torpedoes was not the warhead used by conventional torpedoes, but a miniature AS called Avenger. If these Avengers were to break into the Dan Slave son, it would be a Pyrrhic victory for Teresa, who would suffer heavy casualties. Understood. Sniping the target. Sosuke, Sister Mao, assist me. If there are more targets later, I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of them all. Cruz seemed to know the urgency of the matter and immediately took action in his most proficient state. Melissa and Xiangliang Sosuke nodded in unison and tacitly stood on both sides of the deck, ready to attack at any time. Suddenly, a wave of palpitations appeared. This is... Ray Minkai was shocked and immediately looked to the right of the son of Dan's slave, on top of the huge wave that had just been raised. Kacha! Crackle! Coincidentally, a bolt of lightning struck from the ninth heaven with the power to destroy everything in the world, directly striking the steel figure standing on top of the huge wave. Boom! Under the impact of this destructive lightning, the huge wave was turned into ashes. But the steel figure standing on top of the huge wave was safe and sound, even if it was the first to be hit by the destructive lightning. Above the huge wave, in the dark night, the steel figure with a faint white light under its feet looked down at the AS standing on the deck of the son of Dan's slave, and even more so at the crossbow driven by Ray Minkai. That cold gaze, as if crossing the limits of time and space at this moment, pierced straight into Ray Minkai's heart, crazily oppressing Ray Minkai's heart. That was a sense of oppression that was enough to erase and destroy everything in the world. Hiss! Ray Minkai opened his mouth slightly, slowly took a breath, and looked at the dark red steel figure without fear. King of Hell. No, perhaps it's the undead who returned from hell. Without a doubt, the aura from this steel figure was the aura of the 9 dragons that Ray Minkai personally killed. However now, in this extreme environment, this person who had long died strangely appeared in front of Ray Minkai again. Melissa, I'll leave this to you. The appearance of those torpedoes was probably caused by this AS. I have to go and entangle it. After saying that, Ray Minkai did not wait for Melissa and the others to react. He drove the crossbow and jumped from the deck of the son of Dan's slave fearlessly, plunging into the rolling waves. Night. Wait. Under Melissa's surprised gaze, the figure of the crossbow had long been drowned by the huge waves, the pitch-black surroundings, and the water flow that was flowing rapidly due to the storm. Was everything that Ray Minkai felt after the crossbow plunged into the raging waves. Al, report the situation of the lambda drive system and the cooling system. Although the crossbow was quickly falling to the bottom of the sea, Ray Minkai did not panic at all. The lambda drive system is operating normally. The cooling system is normal. Standby. AL faithfully reported the results that Ray Minkai wanted. Al, do you think it will succeed? Ray Minkai asked when the crossbow was completely swallowed by the darkness under the waves. Night. The database lacks the relevant data and cannot perform any calculations. AL's answer was still filled with the coldness of a calculation program. But Ray Minkai did not mind and only smiled faintly. Al, let me tell you why you won't be welcome. At this time, humans always hope that there will be someone to cheer them up. Is that so? Night. I'll remember. AL still faithfully responded to Ray Minkai's words. No, that's not enough. You should say that. Night. Courage can conquer everything, even if it's impossible. As long as you have courage, you can conquer everything impossible. Ray Minkai closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then suddenly opened his eyes. For example now, under the deep sea, Ray Minkai's roar was extremely loud. Fly. Crossbow. In an instant, a bright light condensed under the crossbow that fell into the deep sea, dispersing the darkness that was trying to pull the crossbow into the abyss of eternal damnation. Then, the light under the crossbow contracted, and a powerful force burst out, blasting the crossbow out of the sea like a cannonball. Chapter 374. The gunshots that resounded through the passage did not stop. Ever since the intruders were deliberately lured to the preset area by Kalinin and the others, They immediately used the most powerful firepower to force the intruders to the other side of the preset area. That was the core of the trap set up by Ray Mingkai and Teresa, the area where Qian Shanwu was. Colonel, the intruders have almost met up with Qian Shanwu. It should be time to start the next stage. Since the moment the battle began, Richard, who had been guarding Teresa, reminded her. But Teresa's attention did not seem to be fully focused on the battle inside the ship. Or rather, because of Kalinin, a reliable assistant, Teresa was not too worried that the battle inside the ship would affect the bridge. Ahem. Captain, please instruct. After taking a few glances at Teresa, who was still focused on the main screen and watching the surging waves surging on the stormy sea, Richard couldn't help but cough a few times in an attempt to pull Teresa's attention back from the sea on the main screen. Richard, is there a situation with Major Kalinin? After Richard's reminder, Teresa finally came back to her senses. No, everything is going well. It's just that Major Kalinin needs to make some arrangements. After Richard reminded him, he immediately explained. Yours too seems to have encountered some problems. I'm afraid that in the following time, we won't be able to intercept all the torpedoes that appear one after another. Torpedoes? It seems that the other party has already locked onto our position. However, at the same time, it also means that we will soon know the other party's position. Very good. Since the other party has already given us such a big gift, then we have to return the favor. Richard, give the order. After the wind decreases, let the special forces attack. The current situation had been, according to Teresa's prediction, step by step towards the final settlement. Therefore, in the follow-up arrangements, Teresa made orderly arrangements. However, the only thing that made Teresa feel a little uneasy was the sea of raging waves outside the sun of the dance slave. There, the crossbow was engaged in a fierce battle with the enemy's King of Hell. A battle between airframes equipped with a lambda drive system. Boom! The lightning in the nine heavens seemed to be attracted by something, constantly swimming out of the black clouds in the sky, directly striking the sea below, wherever it went. Huge waves were turned into ashes, and large pits were blasted open on the surface of the turbulent sea. However, in this terrifying scene, there was something that the lightning from the sky could not destroy. King of Hell. Strong crossbows. As if he was standing on flat ground, he stood steadily on this extremely dangerous and turbulent sea surface. No matter how monstrous the waves were, lightning wreaked havoc. The two opposing AS-class fighters were still fearless. Yes, they were the enemies in their eyes. Night. The Lambda Drive system was operating normally. The latest data of the Lambda Drive system has been detected. AL's voice rang in Ray Minkai's ears. Ray Minkai couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. This was a risk. This was the first time Ray Minkai had stimulated the potential of the Lambda Drive system without trying it before. The result made Ray Minkai happy. When Ray Minkai concentrated with all his strength and stimulated the power of the Lambda Drive system, the strong crossbow achieved an ability similar to Leonard's fallen angel. At this moment, circles of white halos under the feet of the strong crossbow continued to spread out from small to large. At the same time, it also gave the strong crossbow the ability to walk in this turbulent sea as if it was flat ground. No matter how huge, the terrifying waves became as fragile as a baby in front of the strong crossbow that had already stimulated the power of the Lambda Drive system. They couldn't affect the crossbow's every move at all. They didn't even have the qualifications to shake the strong crossbow. Of course, the King of Hell, who was the first to stand on the huge waves and attack the son of the dance slave, was the same. The long braids danced wildly in the wind, and the high temperature generated by the full operation of a Lambda Drive system was emitted into the air. It mercilessly boiled the raindrops falling from the sky in an instant, then turned into hot steam and returned to the sky. Under the influence of this astonishing heat, a misty fog strangely rose from the bone-chilling surface of the sea, adding a hint of strangeness to the churning and huge waves of the sea. Boom! Suddenly, the king of hell moved. There was no warning, there was no conversation. In just a short moment, the king of hell, who had stepped on the huge waves under his feet, raised a machine gun in his hand and fired a dense and terrifying barrage at the strong crossbow surrounded by layers of waves. If Ray Minkai hadn't seen with his own eyes that this barrage was shot by the machine gun in the King of Hell's hand, he would have subconsciously thought that this barrage was shot by a dense array equipped on a battleship. Other than that, Ray Minkai was slightly taken aback by the power of the bullet screen. If it weren't for Ray Minkai's quick reflexes and driving the strong crossbow to avoid the barrage at the first moment, the strong crossbow would have fallen into the barrage like the water that had been blown into the sky by the barrage, struggling helplessly and falling into the sea. Waves of white light appeared under his feet, and the figure of the King of Hell was like a ghost, shuttling back and forth in the rolling waves. The barrage that it shot out was even more unafraid of the cover of the huge waves. With a tyrannical and overbearing attitude, it pierced through the layers of huge waves that were higher than the previous layer and headed straight for the strong crossbow. Boom! Boom! Amidst the splashes of water, the strong crossbow was like the King of Hell. It relied on the power of the lambda drive system to quickly shuttle through the huge waves, dodging the barrage of bullets shot by the King of Hell while trying to find the figure of the King of Hell. In an instant, a bolt of lightning flashed through Ray Minkai's mind. In the next second, the strong crossbow bent its leg and suddenly leaped high into the sky. A huge splash of water also rose from the feet of the strong crossbow, accompanied by the strong crossbow rising into the air. Kacha! Crack! A bolt of lightning shot through the air, heading straight for the air where the strong crossbow was. Boom! The destructive electric shock hit the unavoidable strong crossbow in midair. However, the wall that rose from the body of the strong crossbow made this terrifying lightning that could destroy all living things in the world hate. However, this lightning left behind its last afterglow in this world. I found you. Ray Minkai's eyes widened. With the help of the remaining light of the lightning, he immediately caught the King of Hell hiding behind a huge wave below. Kacha! Without hesitation, there was no nonsense. From the beginning of this battle until now, whether it was Ray Minkai or the enemy, they were not the kind of people who were full of nonsense. What they had was to use all means to defeat the enemy, or even kill them. In the midst of the violent storm, the lifting power of the strong crossbow had reached its limit. Not only did Ray Minkai not allow the strong crossbow to once again obtain the power to soar in the sky. Instead, he used the speed of the fall to quickly fall towards the location of the King of Hell. At the same time, the 57mm shotgun that had been drenched by the heavy rain was also raised at this moment. Bang! Lock on shoot, it was done in one go. The bullets that rushed out of the barrel broke through the thick curtain of rain, tore through the terrifying howling wind, and pounced on the King of Hell below like a meteor. Buzz! The King of Hell did not have any intention of staying where he was. Instead, the moment Ray Minkai controlled the strong crossbow to fire, he immediately jumped back. Boom! Boom! The scene of the strong crossbow, avoiding the barrage of bullets, reappeared. However, at this moment, both sides had swapped positions. Ka! 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 One bullet after another was continuously loaded by the strong crossbow, fired, reloaded, and fired again. It did not suffer any blow because its attacks were dodged by the terrifyingly agile King of Hell. Ray Minkai knew, no matter how outstanding the enemy's maneuverability was, as the controller, the pilot would definitely have his own set of habits. As long as he saw through the flaws of that set of habits, no matter how terrifying his maneuverability was, there would still be a day when it would be broken. Left, right, left, 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 right. The opportunity was in an instant. Left. I've caught you. Under Ray Minkai's quick control, the strong crossbow's hands made several consecutive movements. Shoot, load, shoot again. Finally, The moment the last bullet was fired, he suddenly raised his hand and forcefully smashed the shotgun in his hand, which had already emptied its ammunition, towards the King of Hell. Shout! Two bullets pierced through the air one after another. The King of Hell, who had been seen through by Ray Minkai, had no way to dodge. He could only raise his hand and use the lambda drive system to create a wall, trying to block the attack of the strong crossbow. Buzz! The wall took effect. At this moment, it was a contest between offense and defense. Moreover, victory and defeat were decided in an instant. The first bullet was blocked by the King of Hell. However, the King of Hell was unable to catch the second bullet that came right after. This was because the moment the second bullet came into contact with the wall that the King of Hell had created, the King of Hell's wall actually failed without any warning. Boom! The second bullet mercilessly hit the King of Hell's right arm armor, causing a powerful impact that pushed the King of Hell back dozens of meters from his original position, until the King of Hell was swallowed by a huge wave that rose from behind. Voila! The monstrous wave mercilessly came from behind, swallowing the King of Hell, who was unable to dodge in time. After that, the strong crossbow's radar also lost the King of Hell's signal. Reporting. Target signal lost. Suspected to be silent. AL's prompt sounded in a timely manner. However, Ray Minkai did not believe that the pilot who could use the lambda drive system so terrifyingly would be defeated just like that. Pay attention to the search. He's not dead yet. Ray Minkai's gaze wandered around, and his spirit was even more tense. Suddenly, a murderous aura appeared. A splash of water exploded from behind the strong crossbow, and the cold light hidden in the splash of water rushed straight to the back of the strong crossbow like lightning. In order not to let the cooling system behind the strong crossbow be broken, and in order to counterattack, Ray Minkai's reaction and movements were equally fast. In just a short second, under the control of Ray Minkai, the strong crossbow completed a series of actions, turning around, pulling out its sword, and slashing. Bang! The splash of water was cut in half by the long sword in the strong crossbow's hand, but it also hit a hard metal. Walala! The splash of water fell. What appeared in front of Ray Minkai was indeed the King of Hell that had been swallowed by the huge wave. Just as Ray Minkai had expected, this body that was equipped and proficient in using the lambda drive system would definitely not be so simple to get a bento. The metal that blocked the long sword of the strong crossbow was the single-molecule dagger equipped by the King of Hell. Long sword, dagger. The moment the two weapons collided, intense sparks erupted. Even the heavy rain that was enough to cover everything could not extinguish the sparks that burst out from the collision between the two. Buzz! In the midst of close combat, the King of Hell did not intend to continue the stalemate. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that the two of them were in close combat and could not retreat in time to quickly open his empty left hand. Lambda drive system, activate. In the blink of an eye, under the cover of the sparks that burst out from the collision of the two weapons, a terrifying attack had already been born under the left hand of the King of Hell. As long as it hit any part of the strong crossbow, it would definitely be able to severely injure the strong crossbow. However, the King of Hell could make such an ambush. Ray Minkai could too. The pilot of the King of Hell was not the only one who relied on the cover of the close combat to try to launch a full-strength attack. Thus, the moment both sides reached their peak, the two balls of light just happened to hit each other's chest and abdomen in a subtle but identical movement. Then, they collided with each other's attack without the slightest bit of difference. Boom! The power of the two lambda drive systems collided with a loud bang, blowing away the longsword and dagger that were still in close combat. In the heavy rain, the sharp longsword and dagger rolled in the air in opposite directions until they fell into the sea. Boom! Strong. From a moment the two forces collided, whether it was the strong crossbow or the attack created by the King of Hell, it seemed to have a consciousness. They crazily extracted power from the strong crossbow and the King of Hell, becoming stronger and more dangerous. Even the pill slave's son, who was standing far away, could clearly sense the terrifying energy fluctuations. It was an attack that could destroy the heavens and earth. Captain, I suggest we retreat immediately. Seeing this, Richard's face suddenly turned pale. In the previous test, the memory of the strong crossbow, driven by Ray Minkai, being able to raze an entire forest to the ground with a single sword was still vivid in his mind. In addition, now these two airframes that were also equipped with a lambda drive system were fighting fiercely. It was not difficult for Richard to feel that if this continued, the son of the Dan slave would probably be affected. While approaching the ship used by the enemy, accelerate the evacuation of this sea area. Richard, it seems that the hygiene of our ship needs to be cleaned. Yes, Captain. Then, Teresa's gaze continued to look at the main screen, at the strong crossbow that was still fighting fiercely with the King of Hell. Lambda drive system. I'm afraid the potential of this system has already exceeded our expectations. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.